All right, let's get it. It is drive time. It's a Thursday afternoon. It's about 10 minutes past the hour of 2 o'clock. A little warmer today than it was yesterday. Nonetheless, still a little chilly. It's about 55 degrees, cloudy here in downtown Salt Lake City, Utah. Conditions will improve throughout the course of the week into a pretty decent Saturday and maybe a little chilly Sunday. But look, Thursday, you're almost there. Weekend is almost upon us, and as it is every single day, it's good to have you along for the ride. Spence Checketts behind the mic. That's Porter Larson behind the glass today with a bunch of topics to tackle, a bunch of topics to get to. PGA Championship, round one, Quail Hollow Golf Club in Charlotte, North Carolina. Big story is Jordan Spieth chasing the career Grand Slam. Jordan has not won on the PGA Tour for quite some time, and can Rory McIlroy win back-to-back majors? Something happened today at the PGA Championship that you may never see again. Real quick, Tony Finau was 1 under par, our local golfer in the clubhouse with a 70, which is a solid score, and puts him in the top 30. See what he can do tomorrow. But on 16, the three best golfers in the world all double bogeyed. Scotty Scheffler, Xander Schauffele, as well as the aforementioned Rory McIlroy, carded double bogeys each on the 16th hole. So we have a major going on right now in the world of professional golf. As of today, it is 100 days until week 0. You guys know I love the countdown for college football. 100 days away. College football will be here before you know it. We're going to do some college football on the program today. And, of course, the NBA playoffs roll along. Couple of duds last night, though. The Knicks got dog-walked by the Celtics without Jason Tatum. And the Minnesota Timberwolves sent the Golden State Warriors home as well. So T-Wolves advanced to the Western Conference Finals for the second straight year. And the New York Knicks will have an opportunity to eliminate the Boston Celtics tomorrow at 6 o'clock Mountain Time at the world's most famous arena in Madison Square Garden in Midtown Manhattan. New York has been installed as a slight 2.5-point favorite in that game. Tonight, Denver tries to stay alive. It's a new day and age in the world of pro basketball. We'll talk about that coming up in a bit. Denver up against it. They're at home at Ball Arena. OKC will try to advance to the Western Conference Finals for the first time since 2016. It's only one game tonight. We're approaching the finish line when it comes to multiple games almost every single night in the world of professional basketball, which is always sad. Jordan Spieth, by the way, is 1 over. They just showed his score, so we'll see if Jordan can make this interesting this weekend. So, a lot to do on the program, the latest with the offseason for the Utah Jazz. Probably time to start looking concretely at what could be available for the Jazz at 5 as opposed to just crying that they didn't move up. So we'll get to some of the prospects that we might need to become familiar with prior to June 25th when the NBA draft is held. Of course, just a couple of days after that, the NHL draft will go down, and the Utah Hockey Club, in their first year of existence, received luck that the Jazz have not received in 50 years of existence. Utah Hockey Club will draft 4th overall. So we'll get to some offseason hockey as well. Stanley Cup playoffs going around. It was a great game last night, but Edmonton eliminated the Vegas Golden Knights in overtime. 1-0 your final score there. But at least there was a goal because RSL cannot seem to find the back of the net. It was watching paint dry last night as Portland was in town. Yes, a draw is better than a loss, but neither team really threatened, quite frankly. I mean, Rafa Cabral had a couple of saves at the end, but RSL with a scoreless draw. And now they hit the road. It's time for the Rocky Mountain Cup. I know. You guys are pumped. RSL Colorado Saturday at 7:30 on MLS Season Pass on Apple Television. So a lot to do on the program today. Schedule release day in pro football has a lot of football fans extremely excited. Probably won't do anything on that today. But, hey, now you know who your favorite NFL team is going to play right out of the gates throughout the course of the season. Our first guest today will be Tony Jones. Tony wrote a really good piece on what the Jazz have in front of them now that we know that it's the number 5 pick overall. He's also covering the Denver Nuggets. So we will do some playoffs with Tony. We'll do some Jazz and some draft with Tony right out of the gates today. Alema Harrington, my guy A-Train, who at this point has been doing Jazz pre, half, and post on TV for a number of years. Alema's done a little bit of everything in media. He was even on sports talk radio for a while. Of course, played college football at BYU. So we'll do some college football. We'll do some Jazz with Alema, and then we'll get Alema's take on Brian Santiago, who was introduced as the athletic director at BYU yesterday during a press conference. So Alema will stop by. Then it's been a minute since we've been able to catch up with our buddy Zach Harper from The Athletic. He'll stop by for some NBA Daily Assist stuff. We'll do some sports court with our friends from Handy and Handy. And we'll go from there on a jam-packed, busy Thursday edition of the radio program. Tony Jones, Alema Harrington, Zach Harper, our friends from Handy and Handy, me, Spence Checketts, all of you, the great listeners. And that guy, Porter Larson.
What up?
On a Thursday afternoon, Boston 8-2 without Tatum. I was watching, after the show, rushed home so I could watch as much of the game as I could, and I made sure to tag the pregame stuff so I could watch what the coaches were saying prior to the start of the game. Joe Mazzulla said something that caught me completely off guard. He said, we feel horrible with what happened with JT, meaning Jason Tatum, but we have a very interesting schematic opportunity now. He didn't elaborate, but when you watch the way they played last night, like Jaylen Brown's a bit of an ISO player, but Tatum's the only ball stopper on that team.
Yep.
They move the ball really well. And obviously a lot of this has to do with what the Knicks did not do, but no part of me is confident that this thing is over after watching what happened last night.
Well, and what Joe Mazzulla is alluding to, if not something very specific, right? Maybe not like a specific play or scheme they're going to run. It's more so the fact that you have 10 games of tape on the Celtics without Jason Tatum. You look back on all their runs, the way they play is with Jason Tatum. That's something you have to adjust to as a basketball team, and we're going to now see if Tom Thibodeau can do so. I still, Spence, I understand that logic, and as a coach, you're always going to look for those silver linings, and I do agree there are some schematic advantages to it, but at the end of the day, there is no net benefit, no net positive to losing your 6'9" best perimeter wing on your roster. So, at that point, the Knicks just have to show up and at the end of the day, not lose 3 straight. And then they'll get out of there. And I think they're capable of doing so, even if there is, a little adjustment to no Tatum Celtics.
I hope you're right, man. I feel like they have to win tomorrow.
I do too.
Actually, I
don't know.
I have not nervous watched a game in maybe years. And if they go to Boston for Game 7, I will be a wreck.
I am not built for Game 7.
No.
I will be beside myself. I'll be in stitches. But I kind of think Jalen Brunson, Mikal Bridges, those guys kind of seem like they're built for it. So, hey, I don't know. Let's do it.
I hope you're right. I'm just watching these series through the eyes of, man, I just hope Jazz fans have this opportunity soon. It's so fun watching the team you love play playoff basketball. I don't know when it's going to be back. Hopefully soon. All right, maybe Tony Jones can shed some light on this, but before we get to TJ on a Thursday, courtesy of our good friends at Prize Picks, it is time now for your opening tip.
Welcome to The Drive with Spence Checketts on Utah's #1 sports talk. Now into the studios of ESPN 700 to set the scene for the show. The opening tip of The Drive is brought to you by Prize Picks. Use the code ESPN 700 and run your game with Prize Picks.
You can still cash in on the basketball playoffs with Prize Picks. Don't miss your last chance to add your favorite players from the court to your Prize Picks lineup. Whether it's points, rebounds, or assists, take your pick of more or less for your shot to win up to 2,000 times your cash today. Join your playoff hot takes and the tickets to basketball's championship series, starting with the play-in round. Every lineup you make on Prize Picks will enter you into the Take-Two ticket sweepstakes, which could get you and a +1 a VIP trip to the ship. So here's what you do. You download the Prize Picks app today. Use the promo code ESPN700. They're going to hook you up with $50 when you place your first $5 bet. Don't even have to win that $5 bet to get to $50. It's on the house. So download the Prize Picks app today. Use the promo code ESPN700. They're going to hook you up with $50 when you make that first $5 bet. Oh, Jordan Spieth just lipped out like a 2.5-foot putt. Oh, man. Anyway, Prize Picks, run your game all season long. Tonight, I'm going more on Nikola Jokic, 28.5 points. I'm going to go more on Peyton Watson, 0.5 threes. All he has to do is hit one. I'm going heavy Denver tonight. Jamal Murray's line is 19.5. That feels like even money. I'm going more on that. I'm also going more on Aaron Gordon, 0.5 3-point shots made. So there you go. Check it out. If you want to follow along and play along and then yell at me when I'm wrong, go ahead, because a lot of you do that online. All right. A couple of games last night. We saw the Minnesota Timberwolves advance to the Western Conference Finals for the second straight year. Minnesota is one of those cities, a little bit like Salt Lake, where it's kind of been long-suffering, waiting for a team to win a championship. And obviously they have pro football and pro baseball. But I think it was the Ringer that sent out the stat. Minnesota, the Timberwolves, are now in the Final Four for back-to-back seasons. And it's the first Minnesota team to do that since like 1982. And I think it was their hockey team that actually did it back in the day. So the city of Minnesota is celebrating, watching their team go to the Western Conference Finals. And I just couldn't help but be struck watching Stephen Curry on the bench, kind of watch the whole thing unfold. Like we were talking earlier about how the Celtics seem to be built with depth and top-end talent to overcome the loss of really any of their players, even Jason Tatum, who's awesome. I love Tatum. He's a great player. Boston looks connected still. Golden State looks lost without Stephen Curry. And I don't know what the deal was this series with Jimmy Butler, who just never was fully engaged and never fully got involved. He's a former Timberwolf. He got booed every time he touched the ball. I don't know if that dissuaded him from being a dominant offensive player, and they needed him to be without Stephen Curry. Their only chance was Jimmy Butler to look like Jimmy Butler did 2 years ago when he almost single-handedly took the Miami Heat to the NBA Finals. But he was... last night was about Brandon Podziemski and Jonathan Kuminga. They were the only two Warriors that were even kind of aggressive. Moses Moody gave them some good minutes, in the fourth quarter off the bench. But the game was essentially over by then. Draymond was okay defensively. He was who he usually is. But to me, this loss really is something you look at with Jimmy Butler and like, dude, where were you? 4 of 11. Was not aggressive at all. And Minnesota, as we've talked about, has a ton of big physical wings that are two-way guys that can cause a lot of issues. But my bigger takeaway is, are we done watching Stephen Curry play basketball in the spring, late into the spring? Will we ever see another long Steph Curry run in NBA playoff basketball? It's kind of interesting when you consider who's at home now, and even if you look at what could happen tonight, I'm not writing off the Nuggets yet. I would not do that with a generational player like Nikola Jokic. But it would be difficult for Denver to win the next 2 games to send OKC home. So if Denver is not able to make a pretty remarkable comeback, Jokic will be out, Stephen Curry will be out, Kawhi Leonard is out, LeBron James is out. Like, this is the changing of the guard officially. In the world of professional basketball. Kevin Durant didn't even make the playoffs. I mean, all of the old guard that we become accustomed to watching dominate the NBA this time of year, they're all done, most of them at least, and we could see a couple of them go home as well. So now it's the arrival of one Anthony Edwards, and it's not like Ant is new on the scene, but it does feel like Minnesota has something that maybe nobody was giving a lot of credit for. I will give, I think it was McMahon, it may have been McMiniman, one of our NBA guys, couple of weeks left in the regular season, the conversation in the NBA is, do we even need the playoffs, or is it just going to be Oklahoma City and Boston in the finals? And it may have been Dave who said, watch out for Minnesota. As they get fully healthy and as they become accustomed to playing with each other, that's a team that has a lot of what you need. They're really well coached. As I referenced, in the modern day and age of NBA basketball, and this is something the Jazz have to find. They don't have it right now. And if we're honest, they didn't really have it with Donovan and Rudy in that team because Mike Conley is 6'1", Donovan's 6'3". When you look at Minnesota, it's just their starting lineup. They do, and by the way, let's give Mike Conley some love today, former Jazz man who was awesome last night, 16 points, 8 assists, 6 rebounds, knocked down 4 of 6 threes, hit like a 30-footer. When Mike looks like that for them, it makes them different, okay? But outside of Mike, who's 6'1", Ant is 6'6", Julius Randle is 6'9", Jaden McDaniels is 6'8", and obviously Gobert is 7'2". Like, they have a huge team that makes it really problematic for a team like the Warriors, whose best big is Kevon Looney, who half the time looks like he's lost and he's never played basketball before. And off the bench, Naz Reid is 6'10", Nickeil Alexander-Walker, 6'5". Dante DiVincenzo's only 6'3", but he plays big. He's a good rebounding guard. Love the competitive spirit with that kid. And we need to give Julius Randle a little bit of credit because as a Knick fan, watching Julius Randle be a black hole over and over and over and essentially be the Achilles heel for Knick teams in the past, when they traded him, I'm not a huge Cat guy. We'll get to Cat later. But Julius Randle and his efficiency numbers, they've nearly been tripled for Minnesota than what it was with the Knicks. Now, the caveat is Minnesota has Ant, and for the most part, Julius Randle was relied upon to be the main offensive cog for just an average Knick team. So he has better teammates than he did for the most part in New York, but he has caught me completely off guard. Now, Ant is their best player, but at times Julius Randle has looked like their best player. So, if you're Minnesota and Tim Conley, their general manager, a lot of people were surprised they moved on from Cat. Now, they had some financial implications they had to keep in mind. And a lot of people were surprised they could only parlay Cat into Julius Randle and Dante DiVincenzo. He took a lot of heat for the trade, but it looks like it's worked out, at least so far, because Dante last night was really good, although he struggled a little bit throughout the postseason run. But Randle, my goodness, has been a total beast. Now, on the other side, it could be one of the trades that works out for both teams. So last night was not a great Cat game. He had 19 points, he had 8 rebounds, but he did not look like he was, as engaged as he has been. He's had a good playoffs. He's actually played better in the playoffs than I was expecting him to play. One of the things that made me a little bit nervous about that trade is Cat is a little bit like Donovan, where when the moment is the biggest, they don't seem to meet it. But when it comes to the flow of just a game where there's not a lot at stake, when you're just kind of playing in the first, second, third quarters, they put up big numbers. But Cat's been pretty good for the Knicks. He wasn't great last night. My man OG Anunoby could not hit a shot, 1 of 12. Mikal Bridges, 4 of 14. Boston and their defensive effort, I don't know who the hell Luke Cornett thinks he is. I mean, he looked like Bill Russell. My man had 7 block shots. I'll give Joe Mazzulla a ton of credit for realizing that Kristaps Porzingis, I don't know what's going on with him. There's been this illness thing that kept him out of 8 games in March. He does not look right, could not make a shot. He had a single point. And Mazzulla was like, fine, if you're not going to be engaged, you're not playing. In 26 minutes, Luke Cornett went 5 of 5 from the floor. He had 10 points, 9 rebounds, and 7 block shots. Like, who is this dude? He changed the scope of everything for Boston last night. And ultimately, this comes down to the system of the Boston Celtics. And I said to start the series, there's going to be one game where Boston goes like 20 of 40 from 3 and beats the Knicks by 30. Well, that game was last night. They were 22 of 49 from 3. They beat the Knicks by 25. They are plus 90 in the series from the three-point line. But really, it was their intense defensive effort that caught me mostly off guard, even though they have some good defensive players. They just looked more engaged without Jason Tatum, which I think caught a lot of people off guard. So the Knicks go back to the Garden tomorrow night to see if they can send the Celtics home and go to the Eastern Conference Finals for the first time since the year 2000. That year, they played the Indiana Pacers, and it is the Indiana Pacers awaiting the winner of this series for the Eastern Conference Finals. All right, coming up on the other side, the Jazz will draft at 5. They also have 21, and they have some decisions to make this offseason. We'll do some Jazz basketball with Tony Jones. We'll also preview tonight's game between Denver and OKC. We have Alema Harrington live in studio, going to do some college football with A-Train today. Zach Harper stops by. Sports Court 2 on a Thursday. We are jam-packed and busy and off and running. Keep it right here on ESPN 700. Tony Finau carded a 1-under-70 today at Quail Hollow. PGA Championship underway. That right now is tied for 31st. Your leader is Ryan Gerard at 5 under par. Cam Davis actually just birdied. He's also at 5 under. Luke Donald with a little bit of a surprise, 4 under par, the former world number one. So we'll get back to some golf updates in a minute, but talk more basketball now on a Thursday afternoon with our guy Tony Jones from The Athletic. TJ, where are you at, man? How you doing?
What's up, man? How you doing?
Where are you right now?
I'm in Denver.
Okay.
Covering the Nuggets.
That's what I thought. And we'll get there. But I've got to ask you, how confident are you right now in the ability of the New York Knicks to get one of the next two?
I'm pretty nervous about tomorrow.
Okay. All right. Yeah. I mean, I said earlier.
You nervous?
Oh yeah. No, I'm always nervous. I'd be nervous if Boston was without Tatum and Jaylen Brown. I mean, I have lived my life with this team, and I've seen it way too many times where I get super excited and they completely let me down. So I'm forever a nervous Knick fan, TJ.
Yeah, it's yeah. We just need 48 minutes, get out of the series. If we don't get it done tomorrow, Sunday's going to be really hard.
Yes, it will. I can't even think about that yet. But here's what I wanted to ask you and kind of tap into your basketball knowledge. I last night after I signed off air, rushed home so I could get to the game, and I made it a point to tag the pregame stuff so I could listen to the coaches. And Mazzulla said something that completely smacked me across the face. And he said, look, we're all gutted about what happened with Jason Tatum, but it does give us a schematic opportunity. What do you think he meant?
Well, schematic opportunity is getting Luke Cornett on the floor. And, he provided rim protection, but, he's also provided a lob threat. And I thought that was really big. And, they did some matchup changes. They went with Jaylen Brown on Jalen Brunson. They threw Derek White into help, but the biggest schematic change, they put Drew Holiday on Karl Anthony Towns. And, I know people are thinking like, yeah, that's a mismatch. But we all know that Cat loves the perimeter. So the thinking with that was, he squeezes off the perimeter and, he fights his tail off in the paint. And, if Cat goes, into the post, then they just live with some contested twos. So they did some pretty dramatic matchup switches last night, and obviously Derek White got really hot, had 34 points. And then, Jaylen Brown, got hot, in the second half, but yeah, we got to get it done tomorrow night. We just have to grind for 48 minutes and get this series finished.
Yeah, no, I'm with you. It's just, man, when you look at the way Boston, even without Tatum, is able to space the floor and that 5-out stuff, it doesn't really change all that much. And Tatum is really the only ball stopper they have on the roster. And look, I love Tatum. That's not a criticism. But without Tatum out there, Tony, to me, it felt like the ball was just moving in a way that sometimes it doesn't. Does that make sense?
No, absolutely. I mean, it does make sense. And, the thing is that, without Jason Tatum, you obviously know Jaylen Brown's going to take a lot of shots, but the offense becomes a lot more equal opportunity. And if you do something like that hits in the middle of a series, you don't necessarily have a chance to really, scout for it and prepare for it, especially, by the next game. And, so the what the Knicks have to take into tomorrow is that, okay, now there's film. Now the Celtics have put what they're going to do without Jason Tatum on film. Now you have to prepare in that way. So, it's on Tom Thibodeau and his staff to come up with the necessary adjustments to kind of counter some of the movement and some of the sets that Boston hit them with on Wednesday night.
All right, let's move over to the other game from last night, and then we'll get a preview of the game you're covering. Then we'll spend the remaining portion of the conversation about the Utah Jazz. T-Wolves get it done, 121-110, and for the second straight year, Minnesota's in the Western Conference Finals. I was waiting, and maybe it's not realistic because Minnesota has so many big physical wings. I was just waiting for Jimmy Butler to kind of take over the way that we've seen him do in the playoffs often. And a couple of years ago when he essentially carried Miami to the finals almost single-handedly, and that never came to fruition. Of course, it's interesting to watch Boston play so connected without Tatum and watch Golden State just so confused without Steph, which isn't a surprise. But your takeaways from watching Minnesota dispatch of Golden State in 5 games?
Well, I mean, you said it. Jimmy's not going to get his game. I mean, he's not going to get his game off against Minnesota like that. That team has way too many guys and way too many different guys. I mean, you start, especially without Stephen Curry out there, which would have taken away Jaden McDaniels. But now, with no Curry, Jaden McDaniels switches on to Jimmy as the primary defender. He's 6'10". He's got a 7'3" wingspan, and he's long and he's wiry and he's a dog, just like Jimmy is. So there was no physical advantage there for Jimmy. And then, okay, so, let's go and switch throughout the lineup. Okay, so, you're switching on to Anthony Edwards, who's a dog defensively, or you're switching on to Julius Randle, who's, as physically strong as anybody on the floor. All right, well, let's try our hand with Rudy Gobert. We all know that Rudy Gobert is a lot better in space than people try to make it seem. So, the only real matchup is, kind of going after Mike Conley a little bit. But if Mike Conley's not on the floor, that means Nickeil Alexander-Walker or Dante DiVincenzo's on the floor. And, you get it. The list goes on. It's on and on and on. Minnesota has so many guys who can defend and so many guys who are switchable, who are long, lengthy, athletic, and just really tough guys. So, Jimmy just wasn't going to dominate that series against those kind of matchups. Maybe if he was playing against the Lakers, it's a different thing. But as a number one guy without Stephen Curry on the floor to draw spacing and draw gravity, that just wasn't going to be, a Jimmy Butler series to where, we're looking and he's, throwing up 35 and 40 points a night. That just wasn't going to happen.
Do you think we will ever see a deep spring playoff run involving Steph Curry again?
I mean, there's potential. I mean, he hasn't really slowed down, so what Mike Dunleavy, the general manager, has to do is figure out how to build around, Steph and Jimmy. It's the same thing that, Rob Pelinka down in Los Angeles has to do. You have the tape of this year, not going to the offseason to see what you have to do around LeBron and Luka. So, it's not out of the realm of possibility, that Golden State could, win the West or win another NBA championship because Steph Curry is still Steph Curry. But they definitely have to, go and give some spacing and build some guys around him and Jimmy. I think they have, the two most important pieces in place, and they just have to kind of try to build on that.
Interesting, Tony, before we get to tonight, as of now, no Giannis, no Dame, no LeBron, no Steph, no Durant, no Kawhi, no PG-13, no Embiid, and no Anthony Davis. I could keep going. And then we've got Ant, we've got Halliburton. Hopefully we'll have Jalen Brunson. Of course, the Boston guys have been there before, SGA. Are we kind of finally seeing maybe officially the change in pro basketball from the old guard to the new?
I don't think it's so much of that as I think we're seeing a change from the CBA to where the teams that are going to advance in the playoffs are the teams that have a bunch of guys, not just three guys. So you look at Indiana, they don't have a guy that we'd be like, yeah, that's the guy. They got 10 guys. They have 10 guys who you can throw on the floor credibly in a playoff series. That's the reason why they beat Cleveland, because Cleveland had 7 guys. If Oklahoma City beats Denver, it's because they have 9 guys that they could play in this series. And right now, Denver has 5 guys that they can play in this series. They're playing 7. They're putting 7 on the floor, but they only have 5 who are real, actual playoff players. Same thing with Minnesota. Minnesota's got 9, 10 guys. The only team that's remaining that doesn't have 9 or 10 guys is New York. So it's not a shift from, the old guard, because if Steph had, as deep a team as Indiana, they would have the same chance of going to the finals. Same thing with LeBron. So it's not a change from the old guard, because the old guard, by and large, those guys are still, in the top 10 in the league. LeBron's still a top 10 player. Stephen Curry's still a top 10 player. It's this with the CBA, you got to have depth now, and you got to have quality depth. And if you don't have quality depth, then at this point, in all likelihood, with so many possessions in a game, you're probably going to go home early.
All right, moving over to tonight, Oklahoma City is getting 5 points. The line opened up at 4.5, and it's moved towards OKC. They're a 5-point favorite tonight in Denver, and obviously if they win, they advance. So your thoughts on what you've seen so far in the series, and how do you think it plays out tonight?
Well, the line's moving towards Oklahoma City because Jamal Murray's questionable with an illness. So even if he plays, there's a chance that he's a little bit compromised. But, I think that this series ends tonight because I think that, Denver, like I said, only has 5 playable guys, really. And, this series has gone every other day through its duration, and Denver played pretty much every other day through the duration of their first-round win against the Los Angeles Clippers. So, I don't think the Nuggets have much left in the tank. I think if they had won Game 5, it would have been a different thing. But, the fact that Oklahoma City is so much deeper and they have so many more bodies and they're so much more fresh and they have so much more energy, especially down the stretch in fourth quarters, I think this series ends tonight.
All right, moving over to the Jazz with the remaining time we have left. And, Tony, since you and I last spoke, Monday night's lottery came and went, and obviously a lot of Jazz fans very disappointed, which I understand. The fact of the matter is, as you know, the most likely scenario based off the percentages was not 1. It was either 4 or 5, and they landed 5, which was their floor, which is unfortunate. But what sort of intel do you have out there as far as what sort of players could be available at 5? And I'll ask you, what do you think best case scenario is for the Jazz at 5 coming up in the draft?
Yeah, I don't think it's a tragedy that they landed at 5. There are 5 really good players in the draft. So, they're going to get a good player. If they didn't, the thing that the Jazz, the tank wasn't for the ceiling. It was for the floor. And, they wanted to get the number 1 spot in the lottery balls. So the farthest they could fall was 5. And with the farthest they could fall being 5, they're fine. They're going to get a really good player. They're either going to get VJ Edgecombe, Trey Johnson, or Ace Bailey. Either one of those guys are really good players with really high ceilings, with star ceilings. I think Ace Bailey's floor is more volatile than Trey's and VJ's. His lowest outcome is a lot more volatile than that, but Ace probably also has the highest outcome as well because he has a superstar outcome. So, obviously the disappointment is, that the Jazz fell all the way to 5. The further disappointment is that obviously it was Dallas and San Antonio and Philly moving up. But, if you take the emotion out of it, it's a fine spot to land. There are 5 very good players in this draft. Jazz are going to get one of them because they landed at 5. So, it's not a doomsday thing. They're going to end up getting a good player. And my guess is that it's going to be Ace Bailey, because I think that VJ Edgecombe is going to go 3rd to Philly if Philly keeps the pick, and then I think that the Charlotte Hornets are going to pick between Trey Johnson and Con Kneppel, and that'll leave either Trey or Ace to the Jazz.
So tell me your opinion of Trey Johnson, who appears to be shooting up draft boards by a lot of mock drafts, a lot of scouts who do this. Gavoni's latest has Trey to 6 at the 6 to the Wizards. He has the Jazz taking Jeremiah Fears at 5. So give me your take on Trey, because it seems like a lot of people think he might sneak into maybe even the top 3.
Yeah, I think Trey has a chance to be Devin Booker. Him and Ace, to me, are the best shot makers in the draft. He's 6'5", 6'6". He can handle the balls. He can get the spots off the dribble. He moves very, very well without the ball, but he's unique in the fact that he can play with the ball in his hand, so he can do both. You can play him off the ball or you can play him on the ball. He's a good pick and roll player. I think he's a willing passer, and I think that he has a chance to be an offensive engine. I think that if it's Trey that falls to the Jazz and the Jazz pick Trey, then I think that's a really good starting block to start off of. But the other thing with Trey, I'll say, is I think that he would fit in better than most with Will Hardy's system because of his ability to move off the ball. I think that he's a guy that I don't know if he's the guy that I would take at 3. The question is, who would you take at 3? Because VJ, Trey, and Ace are all in the same tier of player. So right now, I would take VJ at 3, and the reason why is because VJ, of the 3 guys that I just mentioned, is the best defender, and he measured in at 6'4" without shoes. I thought he was going to measure in at 6'2" or 6'1.5" without shoes. So he measured in a lot bigger than expected at the combine. So I think that vaults him into the 3rd spot.
So is it safe to say whoever's left over out of Ace, VJ, and Trey, in your opinion, lands to the Jazz?
I would say that that's the leader in the clubhouse right now. I mean, obviously the Jazz could fall in love with somebody else. Maybe they fall in love with Derek Queen. Maybe they do fall in love with Jeremiah Fears. Maybe they fall in love with Con Kneppel. All during the pre-draft process. But I would say, as of right now, I would say one of those 3, are the leader in the clubhouse at this point.
Really the only local player of interest as far as being able to be drafted at a notable spot is Yegor Demin from Brigham Young. Gavoni has him going to Chicago at 12. What do you think happens with Yegor draft night?
Yeah, his stock is rising because he measured in at like 6'9", without shoes. So if you put shoes on him, like he's 6'9.5", 6'10". I think that it was expected that he would come in and measure around 6'6.5", or 6'7" without shoes. So he's a jumbo point guard right now. Like he's a legitimate 6'9.5" point guard. And he's the best passer in the draft. So I think that his ceiling right now. Don't be surprised if he's really in play at number 6 for the Washington Wizards. By the time all of this is said and done, I don't think the Jazz will take him at 5, but I do think that his ceiling starts at 6.
As far as what the rest of the offseason could look like for the Jazz, they also have 21, so we'll see what sort of value is there at 21. It's interesting. Tim Bontemps from ESPN had a piece up yesterday, and he quoted a number of different front office executives, one who was very specific about his enjoyment seeing both the Jazz and Washington not get number 1 overall because he doesn't believe tanking should be rewarded in pro basketball. And, of course, Adam Silver's endeavor to flatten the odds in 2019 was in part to try to dissuade teams from doing what the Jazz and the Wizards did this year. So, look, next year's draft, and you and others have talked about next year's draft as something that could be very, very exciting. The Jazz have a pick that's top 8 protected, so it would behoove them to be bad again. There are going to be a number of players, good players, Tony, on the move. Namely Giannis, maybe Durant. Who knows what Boston does with that $500 million luxury tax bill now that Tatum's out for probably next year. Do you anticipate the Jazz trying to get involved in a notable piece, or do you feel like next year is going to look a lot like this year?
Whether next year looks a lot like this year or not, the Jazz need to go out and get a point guard. They need to go out and get a real point guard who can actually come in and run a real NBA offense, because I think that they are shortchanging their development by what they're putting out at point guard right now. I don't dislike Isaiah Collier at all, but I think he's a backup, and I don't know that he's going to become a starter in this league. And they just need somebody who could come in and run an offense, because they need to figure out if Cody Williams can play. They need to figure out what Keontae George actually looks like off the ball. They need to figure out, whoever they draft, what he looks like. They need somebody who can throw a lob pass to Walker Kessler, or get Walker Kessler the ball when he's open. They need all of these guys that they need to develop. I think the development's been shortchanged by the fact that they've been so deficient at that point guard spot. So, whether they go out and, get a star or try to get a star, or whether they want to tank next year or be competitive next year, to me, just finding a veteran point guard who can run an NBA offense is their highest priority.
All right. So I guess ultimately that leaves us with the potential of them being in the same spot next year, right? So give us a quick primer on some of the names Jazz fans should be familiar with throughout the course of this upcoming college season or whatever, as far as maybe hope for next year's draft cycle.
Well, obviously you have, AJ DeBanza, Jazz fans won't have any issues watching him because he'll be at BYU. They won't have any issues watching Darren Peterson because he'll be at Kansas. So he'll be in the Big 12 footprint. Those are the two. And obviously Cam Boozer. Cam Boozer at 3. So he's going to be at Duke. And, those are some of the names that should be watched. But Nate Ament, who's going to be at Tennessee, he's a 6'10", 6'11" shooter, can really handle the ball. He's kind of a skinny power forward, but a really, really skilled player. Kareem Lopez. He's an international player who I really like. Christian Nack. I don't know if I pronounced his name right, but he's going to be at Houston. He's always also in the Big 12 footprint. So it's going to be a deep, really, really talented draft. And I can tell you, the 26th draft is one of the best draft classes that I have seen. I think it has a chance to be in that realm of 03, 96, those draft classes that have, come along and 84 that have produced a bunch of Hall of Famers.
All right, Tom, thanks for the time, man. Enjoy Denver. Travel safe. We'll chat soon.
No problem. Thank you, my guy.
Tony Jones covers the NBA for The Athletic. Get him on Twitter at TJones on the NBA. Stops by today courtesy of our friends at IFA Country Stores. IFA has a team of pro turf and landscape sales consultants that help provide products and services to local baseball and soccer fields at high schools around the state. Plus, IFA works with golf courses, parks, and other city properties throughout Utah. It's the same knowledge and care that they share with you about your yard, only at IFA. Alema Harrington, my guy A-Train's going to stop by. We'll do some college football with Alema. Zach Harper later on. We'll do a little sports court too. Busy show on this Thursday afternoon. Keep it right here on ESPN 700. Got a little NBA playoff action tonight. Sadly, we are reaching the end of the two games every night phase, but we'll see if Oklahoma City can send Denver home. OKC up 3-2. They're actually a 5-point favorite as of now, as it just came down about 20 minutes ago that Jamal Murray is questionable with an illness. So we'll see. Thunder Nuggets, your only playoff game tonight. But joining me live in studio, thrilled to be doing this, longtime friend of mine. You can see him now on the Jazz pre-half and post-game coverage on the TV side of things. But Alema Harrington has done a little bit of everything in the world of media locally. Yes, is that right?
Yes, in fact, we're back in this, in the control room, and we're talking about our market, which I've been a part of this market since '96.
Mm-hmm.
Did a radio show starting in 2004, then did radio for almost 10 years.
Yeah,
probably.
I remember.
And loved that part of my media experience. Don't do much radio now outside of jumping on shows, but have been blessed. I personally feel like I have the best job. Can you turn my headset down just a little bit? I think I have the best job really in our market, right? Because I'm covering the Jazz. I've had an opportunity to help launch BYU TV, so I covered the Cougars in that regard. But I've just had, just a blessed life in the media market. As you well know, I mean, we're so fortunate to do the quote unquote air quotes for those listening, do the jobs that we do.
Is that better in your ears, by the way?
Yeah, just a little bit down.
How's that?
Where do I have control of?
Oh, wait, yeah, you can control your headset. Yeah, right under there.
Okay, I got it.
I think
No, I'm good right here. I got it. Yeah.
Okay, there you go. There you go.
That's too much me.
No. Look, I hear you. You've got to be very specific about your levels because what's interesting about our business is a lot of people start to lose their hearing as they get older because
they're a little hot ride-itis.
Yeah. They're
you're screaming at me. Well, I can't hear a thing.
Right. No, I hear you, man. I hear you. Alema's levels are a little bit high in my ears too, but I can control my headphones here. I wanted to ask you, because I can remember you were doing, what years were you doing radio?
2004 is when I came back from Hawaii. I had a little hiatus. I was gone from 2002 to 2004. I came back, and I came back with no job. And Craig Bowler-Jack was doing the big show, right, at that time. And then eventually, you took over that program.
That's right, yeah.
And so 2004, I was doing the original Red and Blue with Pace Mannion.
That's what it was.
Right?
Yeah, that's right.
So I came back, I did that, and I was fortunate enough. The Garfs hired me. I did some Blaze TV for the arena football team. And then eventually was able to work back into the Jazz franchise owned by the Millers, obviously, at that point. Was doing radio and then did a show on TV, a nightly show on K-Jazz called Powerhouse.
I remember Powerhouse.
And then Powerhouse, eventually it turned into the desk opened up and I got the desk job. So,
right on.
Then I've been there now I've been with the Jazz organization. I keep getting these, every year I get something. It's like, I think it's 17 or 18 years now with the Jazz.
That's a great run, man. I mean, all of us in this ecosystem, you just want to hold on to the job and have as much of a run as you can. Because I can remember when you were doing radio, and I got into it because I started in 2003 part-time.
Yeah.
I wasn't full-time until 2007, 2008. And I can remember the station you were at did a special promotion with an ice cream company.
Yeah.
And you all had your own flavors.
Yeah.
And the reason I remember yours is it was the best, and they called it Alema's Dilemma.
Yep.
Remember that?
Fendel's Ice Cream.
Fendel's did it.
Yep.
That's right.
Yeah, it's a spot right up this the street up, and they asked us what would you like in your ice cream? And I said, well, my favorite dessert is pound cake with ice cream and hot fudge.
Yeah.
I said, we could make that into an ice cream.
It was excellent. I remember loving Alema's Dilemma. I remember that when you were on the radio. But nonetheless, I mean, I would agree. The job you have now is excellent. You get to set the table for Jazz games. You and Mike have been working together for a while, and it's always good when you can have tenure with a partner because your chemistry now is dialed in. Is that fair to say?
And Mike and I knew each other. Interestingly enough, Mike was 1 year in front of me at BYU, right? Obviously, he was an All-American freshman at BYU playing basketball, then went on a mission. So when I come in for my recruiting trip at BYU, we're sitting courtside, the recruiting trip journey that everybody goes on, and Mike Smith is playing. And so I know Mike Smith from that experience and then don't really get to know him until, he comes back and then ends up getting drafted by the Boston Celtics. And then he came back and was doing some BYU TV. And interestingly enough, I got my start. I followed Craig Bolerjack around.
Sure.
And Craig was doing some calling BYU games at local TV and then BYU. And so Mike Smith also got his start, as did Holly Rowe. I mean, you take a look at our marketplace, and so many of us that, started off together around BYU and some University of Utah have ended up working in the business, which has been a great thing.
Yeah, and I think all of us followed Bowler around a little bit because as you right. referenced, I can remember I was at KFan, and initially I left here to go to KFan. So I was here doing the show with Bill.
Yeah.
KFan hired me to do afternoons with Gerard.
Yep.
And then the Jazz bought the Zone.
Yep.
KFan dissolved. And they hired me to do the big show with Gordon after Craig was just going to do Jazz full time.
Right.
So in a way, we've all kind of followed Craig, right? A little bit, yeah.
I joke around, and Craig and I mean, obviously I worked with Craig at KSL at Channel 5. Yep. Mm-hmm. And then Craig was actually working at Channel 5 when I was still playing at BYU. So he covered me a little bit at BYU. Yeah. Then I tried to break into the TV business and, approached Doug Miller, who was the sports director at KSL at the time.
Sure, yeah.
It's like, you got to get some experience. So I go back to Hawaii, get some experience, and I come back, and eventually I get the weekend job at Channel 5 with Craig Bolerjack as the lead sports anchor there. And at a certain point, he ends up leaving to go to CBS Network. Mm-hmm. And then comes back around as a play-by-play guy for the Jazz, and I just keep on following him around.
Yeah.
And then even in 2004, when I'm looking for an opportunity to come back to Utah from Hawaii, I reach out to Craig. In fact, I ran into him. He was on vacation in Hawaii, and he hits me up. I meet with him at Cheesecake Factory at the family. I'm like, I'm looking, my kids are up in Utah. I'd like to come back. I don't have a job. He said, well, let me talk to some people, and we'll see if we, maybe we'll get you started in radio. So I come back and follow him in just for a radio spot. So I've just been blessed with not just, opportunities, but the relationships have been fantastic.
It's funny that Bowler was calling BYU games when you were there because, recently our high school coach, Mike Maxwell, was inducted into the Utah Sports Hall of Fame. And we put together a video for Mike about our team that won the state championship in 1997. And I had forgotten this.
Yeah.
But after the game, David James interviewed me as a high school senior. DJ was
right?
we're all kind of intertwined in a way, which is interesting.
It's a beautiful thing, which, to your point, one of the things that I love about the work that I do now, I say I'm blessed, and the Jazz is a big part of it. But doing the high school sports, doing a game on Thursday and on a Friday on TV, I look at the pictures that are in here and I think, I covered that kid when he was at, Highland or, whatever the case may be. It's a beautiful thing to watch these guys throughout their high school careers. And obviously not all of them are advancing to play Division I or play in the state. But for those that do, it's like, man, I'm looking at Raider Damouni on the depth chart now and moving up to number 1 in the safety position at BYU. And it's like, man, I remember one of the big plays that he had. We were at Brighton, Tim Few playing Brighton in the playoffs. I mean, there's all kinds of memories for me that are associated with the kids that are in the, Division I ranks now.
Do you like TV better than radio? Do you have a preference?
I like them both for different reasons.
They're very different.
You can appreciate this because you do both. That a TV segment is so brief. Right?
Yeah.
And so you've got to be able to be concise in whatever you're talking about because the segment is, maybe 3 to 5 minutes or so. In radio, you have time to just kind of, talk things through and chop it up with somebody. And I love that part of it, which is probably why podcasts have become such a beautiful part of the media,
for sure,
stratosphere.
Yeah.
Because you can really, like Joe Rogan can talk, you're going to watch 2 hours of Joe Rogan because you want to hear that long form approach, to a topic.
Yeah. And it's the thing that I love most about radio. I think it's the most intimate form.
Yeah.
Right. And what I had to do when I first started to do TV, because I cut my teeth in radio.
Yeah.
And so what I had to do is try to summarize what I do for 4 hours every day and cut it down to 3 to 5 minutes. Like when I first started doing it with Dave, he's like, we only have like 8 minutes, So it's been an interesting challenge because one of the things I love about radio is that we can sit here and discuss a topic and hash it out as opposed to having 140 characters or just one take. Like I hate the hot take kind of dynamic of our business because, and look, I still run into this. I'll get feedback from people like, hey, I heard you say this on air. I'm like, okay, you heard 5 seconds.
Yeah.
Did you listen to the segment? Because we discussed it and flushed it out. I can say one thing that maybe won't be super flattering right out of the gates in a segment, but give me a minute. We'll land the plane. We'll get there. We'll do some college football and some BYU in our second segment. But while we're in this space, Lemon, let's do a little jazz.
Yeah.
So, of course, it's been a week of disappointment, and there's no other way to put that. Now, Zanuck said this after the most likely outcome based off the numbers was 4 or 5. It wasn't 1.
Yeah.
It would have been great if it was 1 because I think Cooper's awesome. What was your reaction when you saw Mark Tatum hold up the card that the Jazz were at 5?
So I'll give you draw a picture for you, paint a picture for you how I'm listening to the draft lottery. Right, I'm mowing my lawn with my phone in my pocket, and my earbuds in, and I'm listening for what's going to happen here. And when I heard 1, 2, and 3, I was like disappointed. When I heard 5, I audibly groaned.
Yeah, I think we all did. Yeah.
I think, and it probably could be heard throughout the valley. But I think that Tony Jones summed it up very astutely when he just said, being the worst team, your hope is that you want the floor, right? That means that you can't drop below 5. And if there was a time to be 5, it's in a draft like this where you have a talent-laden draft, and your lottery pick, if you're picking in the top 5, is going to be a good player. It's going to be a player that's going to contribute. And I look at really what the Jazz have done in the last couple of years as far as draft picks are concerned, going back to obviously getting Keontae George, and then this last year to pick up to get Filipowski in the second round is crazy, right? At this point, when you're redrafting that, it's he's obviously going to be a lottery pick. But I think that the Jazz at 5 and 21 are going to be able to get players that, you can build on. And that's what you got to look at. I think at this point is, okay, what does the construction look like, right? Because that's basically where the Jazz are. We're not rebuilding, but the construction is going on right now.
Right. And ultimately, it brings up a conversation about what it will look like the next year or two. And, it's funny, Lemma, watching the playoffs, and you hear these stats like Minnesota is in the Western Conference Finals, and it's the second straight year that they're in the finals. This is the first time that the city of Minnesota has had one of their teams in the Final Four 2 straight years since 1982. The Detroit Pistons haven't won a home playoff game since 2008. Charlotte, I think it's been 21 years. Sacramento, I could keep going.
Yeah.
We just simply have been spoiled by the Jazz. When it comes to the end of an era, the bridge has not been very long. It's John and Carl, then boom, they draft D. Will, they get Booz, they get Memo, boom, we're off and running. There's a little bit of a dip, then it's Hayward and it's Favors, and boom, we've got something. Gordon leaves, they draft Donovan, they develop Rudy, boom, we've got something. So we're now 3 years into a little bit of a purgatory period. But that's not uncommon across the landscape of the NBA. And the fact of the matter is you have to have a little pain tolerance to wait until this thing gets ticking. So 2019, Adam Silver flattens the lottery odds. We have 6 lotteries. None of the teams that were among the worst in the league have received number 1.
Yeah.
So it brings to mind what next year could look like. Is it still going to be a slow process with young players? My guess is yes. Do they look at the landscape of the league and try to bring in some big pieces to expedite it? Maybe, but that's easier said than done. What do you think next year is going to look like?
I would agree with you 100%. I think that next year it's not going to be the same as it was this year. I think that there were some objectives. Certainly the development of players was one of the things that they were looking at. And so we saw a lot of opportunities for younger players, which in the long run will benefit this team because those guys got so much experience last year. They're going to be much better players in their sophomore season or their third year in the league because of what happened this past season. I don't think this upcoming season looks like that. I agree with you. I think you want to try to bring somebody in that is going to be not necessarily a true needle mover, but somebody that can contribute. And I think that the Jazz have tried to accomplish that to some degree this last season. and then some injuries that you deal with, and so maybe it doesn't pan out exactly the way that you want to, and it is harder than it seems. It's like, just like go get this guy, and hey, Giannis, you hear people talk. Giannis is talking about leaving Milwaukee. It's like, well, go get him. It's like, it's a little tougher than that. But for me, and I've always been of this opinion, because it's important who you hire. The Jazz have done a great job making sure that they got a front office that knows what they're doing. And I always even when I was doing the show back in the day with Ben Criddle, and we were talking about a Bronco Mendenhall, and he makes a decision, and people are up in arms, and BYU fans, how they can be. And I'm just like, I always make the assumption that the head coach has more information than me.
Certainly.
Right? And so I look at our front office, and I say, these guys know what they're doing. And they have had success in the past and will continue to have success in the future. And you put your faith in that. And then you enjoy the ride. And I got to tell you, last year, if I'm doing my math correctly, I think we did 65 post games after a loss.
Okay, yeah.
65 of them.
That's a lot.
Right? That's a lot of half-hour minimum post-game shows after a loss. And even then, I was able to find some kind of joy in that. And that might seem kind of bizarre, but it was fun, even challenging and entertaining at times, to try to find, okay, what are we going to talk about tonight after this loss, right? And the Jazz were fortunate enough, there weren't a ton of blowout losses where we just got, wiped off the floor. There was always something going on, and that's what I can appreciate about the franchise.
And you reference head coaches who seem to know what they're doing. Yep. And, it was interesting when Quinn left. And I had a good thing with Quinn, and I still talk to him, and he was really good to me. So I was bummed that he was leaving. Danny does his due diligence. And when he landed on Will, I had only heard Will's name because I knew he'd coached with Team USA. And I knew he was Udoka's number one assistant in Boston.
Yeah.
But the first phone call I made was to Jeff Van Gundy, who coached on Team USA with Will. And even before I had Jeff on the show, fortunately for Jeff, he's now back in the league. Unfortunately for us, he can't come on the show. And Jeff said he's a star. He said he's an absolute star. And he's young. This is the right thing to do. So they pick up year 4 and year 5 of his contract option.
Yep.
So he was not a dead man walking next year, nor was he a dead man walking the year after that. But what Ryan and Danny and Justin decided to do with Will, it's almost unprecedented in the NBA. The third longest tenured coach in basketball right now is Billy Donovan. If Will coaches through his contract, he would already be the third longest tenured coach in pro basketball. He has a 9-year runway now. They signed him through 2031. What have been your impressions as you've got to know him, as you've watched him, and what are your thoughts on this contract extension?
I will say this about what I've said this plenty of times on air, that he is the right man for the job. And the job is multifaceted. To your point, is like, guys don't last through a rebuild. And if you do last through the rebuild, you're not the coach after the team is built, right? But they made the decision to go with Will Hardy, an unknown commodity to a degree, as a head coach. And they knew that this was the guy that was going to be able to coach this team. And as we're talking about it, I pulled out my keychain because I have my key card on here for the Jazz. And these are some of the bullet points for Ryan Smith and the Utah Jazz organization. The number one, and I'll give you all of them: transparency, all in, community obsessed, one team, scrappy. Those are the descriptions of what we want the Utah Jazz, now the Mammoth franchises, to be. Transparency was something that we had lost to a degree with Quinn, and I'm a big fan of Quinn. I wish him all the success. And COVID had something to do with that, where we all lost access. And I was part of a media that covered Carl and John and Horny in that era, where we had all kinds of access just as local media members, not just the beat writers, but local media members. And it slowly kind of, slipped away from us. And again, I think COVID had a lot to do with it. And now all of a sudden, like we don't have access to anything.
Right.
To now, our access to Will Hardy as employees, and even then, we were still employees in the Quinn Snyder era. But his willingness to share information with us is unprecedented. I've never seen anything like it. It's been a breath of fresh air, and I love working with him. And if you want to just chat with him, he's willing, as you know, to just sit down and talk for a minute. So to have that kind of access has been really, it's been beneficial, especially going through the last couple of seasons.
For sure.
Yeah.
All right, we'll catch a quick break. We're going to do some college football, and also Brian Santiago is the new athletic director at the Y. We'll get Alemma's take on that. But the Stirring Dirt Racing event is on its way. It's May Mania Derby, May the 17th at Golden Spike Event Center in Ogden. Go to stirringdirtracing.com. You can enter to win tickets now by texting DIRT to 877-353-0700. That is DIRT to 877-353-0700. And also coming up, it's the Daybreak Home and Garden Show, May the 16th through the 18th at the ballpark at America First Square. Go to thebesthomeshow.com. Spring is in the air. The birds are chirping. The flowers are blooming as your home and backyard sanctuary ready to enjoy the coming season. Go check out the new Daybreak Home and Garden Show coming to the ballpark at America First Square, May 16th through the 18th. This new show will have something for every member of the family. Free games for the kids, free day seminars, and hourly prizes. Come tour the exciting new tiny home from Boxable and tour the new Bees Ballpark. Here's the deal. Get your tickets now. It's going to be the most exciting, fun, educational home show ever in Daybreak. Go to thebesthomeshow.com. It's sponsored by our friends at Bullfrog Spas. More with Alemma coming up on the other side right here on ESPN 700. give you a PGA Tour leaderboard coming up in just a little bit and send you to play a little golf, Festival of Tees style. So stay tuned for that. We also have tickets to Matt Rife. I'm not a big Matt Rife guy. Why
you're not going to go?
Tell me why I don't like Matt Rife. You're young. There's something about that dude that I don't know.
It's
kind of irritating.
Me too. I'm with you on that.
Okay.
So I'm maybe not the guy to ask.
All right.
I don't I typically like when there's like off the cuff crowd work in comedy, but when you try to make it your thing, and I don't know if you do it that great. I don't know.
Yeah, that's the issue. He's not funny. He's a stand-up comic that's not funny. But anyway, if you like Matt Rife, we'll send you to go see Matt Rife in a bit. But Alema Harrington, good buddy, live in studio.
Great bump back, by the way. That was a great bump.
There you go. There you go. All right, A-Train. Tom Holmoe for 20 years.
Yeah.
Just did probably a job that most people don't understand how good it was.
Absolutely.
When it came to traversing independence, and you always judge ADs on their hires, and certainly with basketball and football, he went 4 for 4.
Mm-hmm.
So big shoes left behind.
Yeah.
They will be filled by his deputy AD, who started at Brigham Young 27 years ago as an assistant with Steve Cleveland, and then joined Tom's side about 2 decades ago. So Brian Santiago officially introduced as the new AD at your alma mater, BYU. Yeah. What do you think?
This is as seemed to me like a no-brainer, and I knew some of the other candidates that were involved, and there were some good candidates out there. There's no question about that. But Santiago, as you mentioned, 27 years. He's a BYU guy without being a BYU. Never attended BYU as a student or a student athlete, right? Was a great player in basketball, but didn't play at BYU. And then he comes in, and I knew him when I did Steve Cleveland's coach's show when Steve Cleveland was the coach. And so I got to know Brian Santiago, was heading, operations at the time, and was really, to a large degree, he was Steve Cleveland's right-hand man. And then that evolved into, of course, getting into the front office of BYU and the athletics department. And he has been involved in all of the things that you're talking about, whether it's traversing, this independence or getting into the Big 12 or the coaching hires that you're talking about. He was there when Kalani was being interviewed. I mean, he's been so integral a part of what has happened over the last 25, 27 years that this is a guy that feels to me, and of course I know Brian and have known him for a long time, like a natural fit. Like this is of course where you would go after having Tom Holmoe do all of the things that he accomplished. And I knew Tom. I came in and played after Tom was at BYU, but Tom came back after his NFL career and actually coached a little bit at BYU and coached my brother, who was a safety at Brigham Young. So it felt very natural. I wasn't surprised at all when the announcement was officially made, and I thought, okay, when he had his press conference and he assured me and the general public that football is still number one, I'm like, okay, that's our guy.
Well, and hopefully football is still number one, and in theory it is. But what they've done to invest in the basketball program is something. It's something that certainly has worked and paid dividends. But before we get there, it's always tough to follow the GOAT.
Yeah.
Right. And Ty Corbin knows it after Jerry stepped aside and Ty got the job. And I talked to somebody down there after the hire because I've only met Brian a couple of times. I had a chance to go play in Steve Young's charity golf tournament last year, and Brian was there. So talked to him, and seems like a very affable guy. He's most known for, at least my understanding, you tell me, his relationships with deep-pocketed donors. And if that's all he's good at, that's enough.
Yeah.
Because that's the deal now,
That is the job of your athletics director and their deputies, right? Those guys are supposed to be able to convince donors or potential donors to make a contribution to their alma mater or to the school that they represent. And he has done a fantastic job, as has Chad Lewis over the years, and Rob Bosco and the guys that have served in that part of the athletics department. They have done a great job in making sure that the athletics, because everybody says, oh yeah, that's all tithing money. It's not tithing money. This is all money that has been raised and then donated towards the athletics program. Same thing with the broadcast building at BYU. That's not tithing money that's funding that. Those are guys actively out there making sure that those projects get funded. And Brian Santiago has been, the tip of the spear when it comes to those projects. So he's certainly qualified in that regard. And when I look at the coaches that have been hired, they've all been, great coaches. When you say that it's tough to replace a GOAT, right? A guy that's had that kind of tenure. I used to have a saying that it's never the guy that replaces the guy that ends up being the guy. It's the guy that replaces the guy that replaced the guy that ends up being the guy.
It is.
It's hard.
Yeah.
It really is.
Yeah.
It's a tough thing to be able to, replace the Lavelle Edwards as Gary Croton. You come in, you go 12-0, but then it all falls apart.
Yeah.
And then, Bronco comes in and okay, now things are back to normal. And now you got Kalani Sitake, who I really believe is the right man to lead this team for the foreseeable future. I would say that Kyle Whittingham becomes one of the rare instances. Now, granted, Urban Meyer only had a couple of years at the University of Utah, so it's not as hard to replace that because he wasn't as established. But it is rare that happens. But there are exceptions to that rule.
Do you think? Do you think the football team is receiving the same amount of financial support the basketball team is? Because look, Kalani's my guy.
Yeah.
And love Kalani. I did a coach's show with Kalani when he was here as the defensive coordinator every week. And I can remember after just a few months, I thought, okay, he's going to be a head coach someday. Maybe at BYU, maybe at Utah, who knows? And, the tough thing about reporting on NIL is there are a couple of outlets that claim that they know the figures. There are a few college football and college basketball media members who I trust. And so if you just do the calculation, the reports are DeBance's getting between $5 and $7 mil for 5 months of basketball. Jeff Goodman reported that the number for Rob Wright, the kid from Baylor, was $3 mil. We know Rich, you got 7 figures. If you just do some loose math, they're paying about $13 to $15 million for their roster in basketball next year. And I have it on good authority what Kevin Young is making. And I can remember when I heard the rumor that Kevin Young might come to coach BYU, and I said, no way. And here's why. He interviewed for the Celtics head coaching job. He interviewed for the Suns head coaching job. And he interviewed for the Jazz head coaching job before Danny landed on Will. So I knew Kevin, not personally, but the LDS guy coaching the league. I thought there was no way they were going to get him. And then I heard what they were paying him and what they promised him. So, Alema, we know that the basketball program is funded handsomely. Is my guy Kalani receiving the same support?
Yeah, you're probably asking the wrong guy because I'm a football guy. So I'm going to look at everything as like, what about our guys? What are we getting over here?
Right.
And the reality is when you're talking about basketball versus football, you're talking about, an 80-man roster or 40, plus, whatever the case may be. And then your coaching staff is going to be you used to be a whole lot larger than a basketball staff. Now the basketball staff is pretty doggone big, right? But I've talked to enough. I know enough guys in those NIL circles that assure me that are involved with BYU that BYU is still getting the attention, and maybe that attention doesn't result in the same dollar figures that you're seeing for a guy that's only going to be there for 5 months.
Yeah.
That there's going to be times when you're willing to pay that for a guy like AJ Debonsa because he is a franchise-changing type of player.
Have you seen him play, by the way?
Yes, I've seen the highlights, and then I've seen him play. And by the way, if you're just watching the highlights, like you got to go see this guy play in person. It's a whole different thing because the highlights, you always wonder is like, well, who's the competition? You go watch him play in a competitive, or even in a pickup situation, you're going to be wowed by this guy. Maybe the most skilled player that we've seen, for me. And I watch a lot of basketball now because I've got kids that are playing club basketball, and I see the level of talent that is around. And we travel. We're at EYBL. We're at all the different tournaments. And this is a guy that I don't care who you are, he's going to wow you. And so to be able to get a kid like that, it's like, okay, what are we willing to spend? It's like the question is, can we afford not to pay him and let him go somewhere else?
Yeah, and to your point, he's the one that's worth the check.
Yeah.
AJ's the one that's worth the check.
Yeah.
That's why you write it. My only concern, and look, I know there's this thing where it's the BYU experience and it's different here, and he's a BYU guy, and maybe Kalani is just that. I can remember I did radio. One of my favorite experiences is doing radio with Lavelle and Ronnie Mack on Football Fridays, and hearing Lavelle tell the story of he never worked with a contract, he never cared to renegotiate a contract, he just was thrilled that he got paid to do what he was doing.
Basically $100,000 a year,
which is
right.
Okay, that's great in 1982, but in 2025, I'm sure Kalani is probably not rolling that way. My concern, Alema, is if they don't take care of him, at some point he's going to get a phone call from, I don't know, another P4 school that says, okay, what are you making? We can literally triple that if you want to come work for us.
Yeah.
Because as much as Bronco wanted to say this is about independence not working, sure, buddy, it's also you tripled your salary, Bronco.
Yeah.
So that's my only concern if you're not taking care of Kalani.
Yeah, the difference between Bronco Mendenhall and Kalani Sitake is that Bronco Mendenhall, who I love and respect and admire the work that he's done at all the schools he's been at, was not a BYU guy.
Yep.
He just wasn't. Kalani Sitake, this is a destination job for Kalani. Now, I say that and at the same time hope that he does not get disrespected in the process because, this has always been the concern about the way that BYU has recruited LDS kids. Oh, they're LDS. They're going to come here. We don't need to pay attention to them. They're going to be here anyway. Don't treat Kalani like that. I don't think that Brian Santiago, now that, leading up BYU's athletics department, I don't think that will happen. I could be wrong, but I don't see that as part of the future. And I agree. And there's been a lot of progress over the last 10 years as far as coaches getting paid. And it was partly Bronco who made sure that his assistants got paid, and then Kalani Sitake being more concerned about his assistants getting paid because that's an important part of what you're building. But take care of the guy.
Yeah.
Take care of the guy.
Yeah. Yeah. And hopefully they are. I mean, I know they did renegotiate. I saw a couple figures online. BYU is a private institution. You can't gamma request it. So I can't sit here and tell you I know what he's making. I can sit here and tell you what I've been told that Kevin is making is reportedly more than Kalani is making, which is a wild thing to do. In the landscape of college athletics, the P4 teams that value basketball over football, that's a short list. It's a Duke. They're not very many schools. And so to hear Santiago say that football is still our driving force had to land really well for a lot of BYU fans that have this narrative that they're taking care of basketball and not football.
And this is what I read between the lines when you make a statement like that. Okay, so it's not like Santiago is unaware that those numbers that you're speaking of are out there in the atmosphere and that people understand that the Kalani knows this, right? To me, reading between the lines is, hey, we took care of Kevin Young. We needed to. It was a timely, moment in the basketball program's, progression. We will take care of you. Yeah. The time will come and we will take care of you. I think that is an unstated but understood thing with Kalani Sitake at this point.
Did you get to know Coach Witt at all?
We didn't overlap when we were playing. So I played with two of his brothers. In fact, Fred, the tight ends coach, was my class. So we were in the same recruiting class on the same recruiting trip. So we played together. So I know Fred better. And then I took some beatings from his brother, who was a linebacker there after Kyle was done. Yeah, but everybody knew who Kyle was. Certainly,
I've often said the two biggest days in modern Utah football history are the day they got the Pac-12 invite and the day Kyle said no to BYU and yes to Utah. What was your reaction because Kyle was the guy that BYU wanted. Yeah. And, I grew up in a generation of Lavelle Edwards where Utah got nothing that BYU wanted, including wins, right? So it signaled kind of a changing of the guard. I wonder what your reaction was to that.
Well, it's been interesting, my evolution as a BYU fan, where I literally do not have a red tie. I don't have a red piece of clothing and will not until my sons, who may go to Alta, if they go to Alta High School, they play in the Alta Bantam programs, then, I wear some red because of that. Sure. But at this point, I have so many guys that are crossovers that I played with them. Their son now plays for Utah. I'm a Utah fan. Like I'm a fan of these players. I'm a fan of Kyle Whittingham. I don't necessarily, cheer for. I'm like Frank Dolce to some degree in that regard, right? Yeah. I'm cheering for the guy that I love. Yeah. Right. My friend, my former teammate, those kinds of things. So when that happened, I was having a hard time wrapping. My question was, like, if Kyle becomes, because he'd been such a success at Utah, if he becomes the BYU head coach, how do I process that? Because I had spent plenty of time, like most BYU fans, saying, oh yeah, but Kyle Whittingham is a BYU guy. At some point that changes, and yes, he's an alumni of our program, and we're proud of that. but that's Utah man through and through.
Yeah.
So when he decided, and as the story goes, some prayer and contemplation on the decision, decides to stay at Utah. One of my sayings is God has a plan that's better than yours. For BYU, that was the better plan. We ended up with Kalani Sitake, and that's a win for us.
Sure, and like I said, I'm a huge Kalani guy, and I do think he's the right guy to lead the thing moving forward. Are you glad to see the rivalry back in the same conference?
Yes,
you are.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I mean, all of us, dreaded the independence when you were going to play them, and that still hasn't necessarily worked itself out in the Big 12 yet. But number one, it's hard to be credible and say that BYU didn't become little brother at that point, right? Utah's in the Pac-12. We playing an independent schedule with absolutely nobody in the back half of the season.
Yeah.
So you tried to sell it, but it was a real hard sell. So for us to be back in the same conference, and it was interesting to watch social media as the Pac-12 fell apart and everybody's BYU fans are cheering, and then they get into the Big 12 almost instantaneously, and now you got to eat crow. I think it's the best thing that has happened maybe ever for this rivalry, because it allows us to be back in the same recruiting war, we're competing on more of an even playing field. And I think it's good for the state of Utah and sports in Utah to have that rivalry back where it needs to be, which is in the same conference with conference implications.
For sure. Let me ask you one more thing, then let's get to the golf tournament before I set you loose. You worked still with the Jazz, but Alex Jensen was with the Jazz for 9 years while you were there as well. And look, I love football, I always have, but I'm a basketball guy at the end of the day, and Utah basketball means something to me.
Mm-hmm.
And the fact that we're coming up on a decade between NCAA tournament appearances, are you kidding me?
Yeah.
And the Kevin Young experience has already been crazy and very exciting.
Mm-hmm.
Very few things get me down to Provo. AJ Devonta will.
Yeah.
I'm going to head down there for a couple of games this year. Tell Ute fans your experience watching Alex, work with Rudy and what you think Alex Jensen can do for the Utah basketball program.
Take you back maybe a little bit prior to the Utah Jazz experience, because I covered Rick Majerus and the team that went to the Final Four and then lost in the championship game down in San Antonio in the Final Four. And Alex Jensen obviously was on that team. And he was a leader on that team, an important part of that team. So I've known Alex since his college days. And then, of course, when he got hired by the Utah Jazz and was on Quinn's staff and watching his development skills, right, and being able to develop a player like Rudy Gobert, 4-time Defensive Player of the Year, that kind of stuff is, if we're talking about a college experience, that's what you're looking for, is a guy that can do that. And when that announcement was made, I was elated for the University of Utah and for Alex. And I'd run into Alex when Dallas would come and play, and we'd see him, and he was always cordial with my kids, and so we'd get a chance to interact with him. I think we're talking about we're a fortunate state where we have good college athletics, and then we have good coaches, like to have Kalani Sitake and Kevin Young, and then Alex along with Kyle. It's like, I mean, you couldn't ask for anything better than that.
Bronco up in Logan now.
Yeah, and
right?
Bronco
Pretty
up in
cool.
Logan. That's fantastic.
Yep.
And I think we're really fortunate that we have, and this is my personal observation and opinion. There are a lot of coaches that are out there for themselves. They just are. And so to have guys that really and truly care about their kids, even in a day and age where the kids have started to stop caring about the team, I think that's a very valuable thing to have, and we're fortunate to have it.
Well said. All right, before I set you loose, coming up next Thursday, May the 22nd.
Yeah.
Thank you for the invite. I'm excited to go down there and hack around. Hopefully I play well. But you and I are kindred spirits in a number of ways. One of the things you do that isn't as public and front-facing is you help people that find themselves mired in drug and alcohol addiction. And, I always say this. I think we live in an era where I'm just grateful that we can say out loud, mental health is simply health, right? It's no longer this weird thing. It's not the Gentlemen you see under the tree at Pioneer Park, it's not the people you drive past during Jazz games and wonder what's going on with them. It's your brother, it's your sister, it's your ward member, it's your neighbors. It is pervasive. I think it's an emergency in our country. I have for years. So the golf tournament sold out, but the cause is something we should talk about.
Yeah, the golf tournament, it supports the Salida Foundation, which is a 501c3 nonprofit. What it does is it helps people that are coming out of residential. And I'm a product of residential treatment. Without residential treatment, I wouldn't be here. It's just plain and simple. But as part of that process, what we've seen over the years, and I have a substance use disorder counseling degree, went back and got some information and some education. One of the things that becomes critically important is a residential treatment program is usually 30 to 60 days, right? And then after that, a lot of people find themselves kind of out there on their own. What the Salida Foundation does is we support people with scholarship funds so they can apply on the Salida Foundation, thesalidafoundation.org. And they can apply for a scholarship to help them with sober living expenses, which is one of the critical transition, pieces that helps people to stay on a sober path. So we help them with the sober living, and then we can continue to offer and pay for their trauma therapy if they need more of that. And then there's a mentoring that's a part of that, which is a huge piece. The mentoring, to be able to have somebody that you can reach out to, like a quote-unquote sponsor, but also a mentor that is going to work with you. So the Salida Foundation provides those services, and the money that we'll raise through the golf tournament, which, again, thank you to all the people that have signed up. It's sold out, but those monies will go to help people that are in need and help them stay on a sober path.
And where can people go get more information? Let's say we have a listener who's going through some things themselves, or maybe a family member.
Yeah, please go to the Salida Foundation. That's SOLIDA, thesalidafoundation.org. And you can make a contribution, make a donation of any kind, and you can make a monthly donation if you want to set it up that way as well. But we appreciate all the support, and it's making a big difference.
A-Train, great to see you. I'll see you next week, all right?
You as well. Always good to see you, my friend.
Yeah, much love. There he is, the great Alema Harrington. All right, time now for the Festival of Teas, powered by the Utah Golf Association. Each day of spring, ESPN 700 is giving away rounds of golf to the best courses in the state. Today, we are sending you to Soldier Hollow. So text in golf right now to 877-353-0700. Text in golf to 877-353-0700. If you do not win the round of golf to Soldier Hollow, we're going to send you to see Matt Rife, a stand-up comic who's not very funny. All right, 2 hours down, 2 hours to go. More coming up right here on ESPN 700. It might be time that we retire the bit. It might be time because it started out as a funny thing, and I know Zach is going to come on and pretend that he likes Pitbull, but Zach has been traveling. He's been busy. If you follow him on Instagram, he's been doing a bunch of things. So we haven't had him on for a while, and now I'm just remembering that the bit just ruins my day. I think it's time that we retire the Pitbull bit because Zach,
so, huh?
Well, Zach doesn't really like him. He's going to come on and pretend that he does, but there's no way, like in reality, he actually does.
We'll leave it up to him. It's his walk-up song.
Zach, off air, how often are you rocking Pitbull?
Every day. It's in. He has at least 4 songs in my favorite songs playlist on Spotify.
Do you feel okay about yourself when you come on air and just lie like this? You're lying.
I feel great. I feel great about myself.
All right.
I feel great about myself when I tell the truth about Mr. 305, Mr. Worldwide. You're tapping your toe. I know, I can't see you, and that's why you feel comfortable lying about this. It's a bit for you to be like, oh, I don't like Pitbull. I know it's in your car. I know it's on your pill at home. Come on.
It's very much not. But how you been, man? It's been a while. Tell us, give us an update. You've been all over the place.
I've been good. I feel like there's been a how do I put this? There's been a pregnancy with my schedule. I don't mean that as my schedule is growing constantly, and I'm just waiting for that to just explode and just not have that anymore. And I feel like now that we're down to 1 game a night, I feel like that birth has happened.
So your water has broken. You're no longer traveling all the okay.
Broken. Yeah, and it's just I'm like, what do I even do with my time now? There's 1 game a night. 1 game a night. I feel like I don't even have a job anymore. This is incredible.
Where are you right now?
I'm in my apartment.
Okay, you're home.
Anymore. This is crazy. Yeah, I just spent a weekend in New Orleans, and trying to do my job and have fun at the same time was insane.
Did you behave yourself even kind of?
I mean, yeah. I got my work done.
Okay, that's all that matters. As long as you get the work done, you can do whatever you want. All right, Zach, we got to start here. The lottery's rigged. Everyone hates Utah. Sure. No one loves the Jazz. Okay, so the fix is in. What's going on, man? How do we fix this?
Well, my solution is simple. Is one we lament tanking all year, right? Or at least half the year. We're like, this is bad. It's bad for the product. And then the teams that tank don't get rewarded at least the last 3 years. And they were like, well, this is unfair. They did all this tanking, they get rewarded, and that's not how that's supposed to go. So to eliminate tanking and to make this a more fair process, it's an unweighted lottery, 1 in 14 chance. You miss the playoffs, 1 in 14. That way, there's no incentive to be as bad as the Wizards and the Jazz and the Hornets were this year, in order to kind of try to stack the odds in your favor, as to get that 14%. 1 in 14. I think it's a simple solution. I will never believe that teams are going to tank out of the playoffs in order to get a 1 in 14 chance at the number 1 pick. I think that is so ridiculous and fails to understand how NBA teams operate. And I think it will bring a better product to the last couple months of the season.
Certainly. Well, while we're in the space, even though I am risking insulting your intelligence and I find the conversation intellectually embarrassing, we do live in the modern day and age where if your guy doesn't win an election, you cry that it's stolen and you storm the Capitol. And if your team, I'm not saying it's not. Let's be clear. Okay. I'm not saying that wasn't the right thing to do. I'm just painting a picture. If your team didn't win, the ref got paid. If your kid doesn't make the team, the coach doesn't like you. We cannot take L's in our society. So I am doing radio in a city full of people that believe this thing is rigged. Can you help us understand why it very much is not?
Well, look, I can't be certain that it's not. I do know that there are
Zach,
a lot of people.
You don't know what you just did. Oh, no. Hey, Porter, shut the text line down. I don't want to hear from anybody.
All I know is that I know several people that were in the room that the lottery happened in. They believe it's on the up and up. They watched it. They experienced it. I got to take their word for it. I don't think that maybe we should check their bank accounts, but I don't think that there was some large sum of money or some unmarked bills in a duffel bag given to them. we've had this process viewed by the media for a long time, and they write about it, they talk about it every year, and so, based on knowing that, maybe I need to see it myself, but I feel like at this point it seems like pretty hard to rig. At the same time, there are some very coincidental, moments in this lottery history that seem hilariously, pointed in one direction. I think it's funny. It also doesn't affect me negatively, so it's easy for me to find it funny. I understand why certain fan bases are upset. I just, man, it's hard to imagine you could rig that, but everything's rigged these days if it doesn't go your way, like you said.
Well, if I could speak for Jazz fans, I just was hoping Mike Pence would do the right thing. That's where I'm at with it.
I mean, look, I think maybe he should be in the room for the lottery.
Yeah, I mean, I'm an idea man. Look, here's the deal: the one team that could not win the thing to not inspire conspiracy theories won the thing. Like that's what happened.
For sure, and we had the same thing with New Orleans twice, right? With the Anthony Davis draft and the Zion Williamson draft, and Cleveland wins it the year LeBron leaves. Like, I mean, look, you have these moments where it does seem awfully coincidental. LeBron, the LeBron draft when Cleveland gets the number 1 pick, the Chicago gets it when Derrick Rose is available. Like, yes, there are times where it seems impossible for this stuff to happen, and you can point towards whatever. Like, it feels like those things where if you want to believe it, you can find a way to twist it. Right? It is so funny. I mean, I was doing a video or something for The Athletic, and we were doing this thing of like the best like who I wanted to see win the lottery and who I didn't want to see win the lottery of this. And I almost put in the top 5 of teams I wanted to see the lottery Dallas, and then I thought, no, that's ridiculous. That's not going to happen. And then of course, like as it gets down to they're in the top 4, I thought, oh my God, like they won this thing. Before I even saw the top, like who was positioned in the top 4, you just knew, like, of course they won this. Like, it's too funny. Well, I guess it's not funny to a few fan bases, but to me, it was too funny for it not to be them.
Yeah, and for comedic purposes, not just Dallas at 1, but the freaking Spurs at 2. Like, give me a break, man.
But all right, would it have been? Would it have mattered? But I mean, I guess Jazz fans getting 5th, like it sucks no matter what. But would they have felt better if it was the Spurs at 1 and Dallas at 2, or it doesn't matter?
I don't think it matters. I mean, as much as it's stinging folks around here that the Jazz fall to 5, the other thing that you look at is if you're the Jazz, you're already a mile behind OKC. You're already a mile behind even Houston and all the, you're a mile behind most of the teams in the West, but maybe some of the other teams are within shouting distance. Now 2 of your Western Conference peers will add 2 really good players to 2 rosters that already have a lot of really good players on them.
Yeah, and that's fair. I mean, I think the good news, and maybe this is being mean, but like the good news is like you get out of the Ace Bailey situation, right? We think. Like I think that like if you finish in that top 2 or 3, you probably end up having to take him if you don't get the number 1 pick. And so maybe you everything you read about him, see about him, like it just seems like that's a guy like you kind of have to take in that zone, but I don't think he'll fall to, I mean, maybe he will fall to 5. I don't know. He just measured it like 6'7".
Yeah.
He thought he was 6'10" this whole time.
Yeah, and if he falls to 5, I mean, maybe you view that as a win. Yeah, I think you do. I mean, unless you fall in. I mean, look, you know the deal around here. Folks are like, well, we can't get Cooper Flagg, so let's get Con Knipple. It's like, let's not just do the best white guy possible. Maybe get the best player. Yeah. Who do you think is realistic at 5, though?
It's a good question. Like, I mean, the Con Knipple thing is like, yeah, like you could get a 6'5" guy who plays like he's 6'1". Like like he's good, he's skilled, but he plays so small.
Yeah,
I don't understand the draw of a guy who plays so small for what his height actually is. I mean, I guess in the 5 range, like I've seen Trey Johnson. I think Trey Johnson's really good. Like I don't think you want Derek Queen. I definitely don't think you want Con Knipple. I don't think Jeremiah Fears is like the right guy there. I'm a big Maluach guy. Like I think there's so much potential there. And I know you have Walker Kessler as the center, but like I just think that there is so much raw potential there. And it's not like, oh, you've got to teach this guy skill. He has great touch. He has great feel for the game. He's a good defender. He's a good rebounder. He's a good offensive player. His teammates rave about him. Like, I think that is the guy with the highest upside outside of Cooper Flagg and Dylan Harper. Now, he may not reach that, but if your whole organization for a decade plus has been about we get guys and we develop them and we bring that out of them, to me, that's the guy to develop.
Yeah, it's an intriguing point, and yeah, the Walker stuff might be a little bit redundant, but I wonder if you think the Jazz have what it takes to I don't think it, and even Tim McMahon reported this week that the ownership in Dallas has handed the edict down, like, Nico, you're not allowed to trade it. Okay, we are keeping it, and we are drafting Cooper Flagg, so stay out of the room. Yeah. But do you think there's any world where San Antonio looks at De'Aaron Fox and Stephon Castle and says Dylan Harper's a little redundant and maybe somebody can grab number 2? Do you think the Jazz get involved in something like that?
I think they absolutely should. I mean, I think with their kind of treasure trove of picks and their young guys and even, I mean, I know this sounds maybe a little ridiculous, or maybe it doesn't. I don't know. If I'm Utah, maybe this isn't getting enough back and you've got to figure out a way. I would dangle out Lauri Markkanen. Be like, hey, you want this guy next to Wemby? Here's a shooter that'll spread the floor. We go get the number 2 pick, and you really start like, all right, you believe in Dylan Harper. Like, I mean, look, I know the marketing and everything. Dylan Harper is way better than Isaiah Collier and Keontae George.
Oh, for sure.
Way better.
For sure.
Way better, right?
Yeah.
Like, you don't have to do that thing anymore where it's like, oh, he passed John Stockton's record. Like he's legit. He's a legit point guard prospect. And so, like, you need more back than just the number 2 pick. Lowry's obviously awesome, but, like, you maybe have to get aggressive in that. And since you're now accepting that you're in a rebuild 1 year into a 3-year rebuild, now you can actually lean into it and go get whatever that is, and maybe bring in, whether that's a Keldon Johnson, maybe it's I mean, I don't know if they would do 2 and Stephon Castle. Like, that seems aggressive. I don't think they would do that, but like they have a lot of pieces that you can go get and maybe get involved in 3-team deals. Like, I think it would make sense for the Jazz to be very aggressive with trying to go grab a higher pick in this while still holding on to the 5th pick, where you can still get a very good player.
Yeah, I think I think one of the main issues that you could run into there is San Antonio could probably get a lot for 2, right? And do they?
Right.
Do they? And look, Lowry's really good, so I'm not trying to disparage Lauri Markkanen, but you call San Antonio and you offer them 5 in Markkanen for 2. They also have 14. You get a late lottery pick and maybe a piece from them. And then you reset and you start over with a legitimate piece, because they're not going to be able to get to 1 to get Cooper Flagg. I have all these friends like, hey, they should trade to 1. They should trade up to 1 and get Flagg. I'm like, they should do that, but you need 2 people to agree to such transactions. So could you get 2 and 14 and a piece from San Antonio for 5 in Markkanen? Or could San Antonio get a lot more than that for 2 because so many people love Dylan?
Yeah, I just don't know if you need to include 5. Like, I don't know that those players are going to be out on the market. Like, I know there's the talk of Kevin Durant. Do we know that they want to go sell a bunch of assets for a couple of years of Kevin Durant? I don't think that doesn't seem like the move that they would do. Like, for what we know about that organization. I don't really believe that Giannis is going to be on the table. I don't really believe that Booker is going to be on the table. Like, if we're starting to look at, star, and maybe I'm wrong about all that stuff, but if we're starting to look at like stars who could be available, a player like Markkanen might be as good as it gets. Now, it doesn't mean you have to make a trade if you're San Antonio, but I don't know that you have to. If I'm Utah, I'm not really dangling that 5th pick in that trade unless it is a very aggressive trade market. They do have all these teams throwing that in, and then you do have to include that.
Do you think, I mean, look, I would sound like the biggest hypocrite in the world if I sat here and said, man, it was the wrong approach this year to intentionally lose, because I believed it was the right thing to do. And I believed it was the right thing to do when Wembanyama was available after you move on from Mitchell and Gobert. But I also have to acknowledge at this point that since the odds were flattened in 2019, literally zero of the teams that the Jazz that did what the Jazz tried to do this year have been rewarded with the number one overall pick. Tim Bontemps had a piece up on the .com for ESPN citing a number of different front office executives that all seem to be in lockstep that they're glad that the Jazz and the Wizards were not rewarded for having a lack of integrity of trying to build a team that actually competes for real. Are we moving into a space where you no longer want to lose intentionally, even though in a city like Salt Lake, it does feel like the only way to get a Cooper Flag or a generational piece is to have the top one or two picks in the draft? You know, it's interesting.
This is the process. Like, it is still the best avenue towards getting one of those guys in the draft. Just because it hasn't worked the last 3 years in terms of the worst team getting that doesn't mean the other teams who have tried to tank and improve their position. I mean, Washington was terrible last year. They ended up with a 2 pick. This year it was a high profile class, and you had 2 good teams. Well, I mean, San Antonio wasn't that good, but they were supposed to be good, right? And because Wemby's injury and everything. But you had 2 good teams, or supposedly good teams with a lot of talent, end up at the top of the draft. I still believe, like, to me, this is reminiscent of like a few years ago. All of a sudden, it was like, hey, I don't know if you want a big 3. I don't know if teams want 3 superstars instead of 2 superstars. And this was before the CBA got changed and everything. It's like, no, they want as many stars as they can get. We can sometimes overthink this stuff because of the results. The process is still to get the best odds in your favor. And so until they change it, I still believe that's going to happen. Like if I'm going to butcher the kid's name, but the AJ, the kid that's going to BYU, if he is, the one everyone tanks for next year, and one of those teams tanks and gets him, it's just going to reinforce the tanking process. Like, unless the NBA truly is rigging this thing to get the non-tanking teams to get that top pick to dissuade, anyone from trying this process, like that's the only thing that's going to make that tanking option not actually look attractive.
Yeah, and obviously the reaction this week is prisoner of the moment with what happened Monday night. But what does Philly do at 3? I mean, we've talked Dallas and San Antonio. I mean, technically, they have 2 really good players that I'm going to say when healthy, because you have to, are still kind of game changers. Do you think they could move that pick to try to get Embiid and Paul George and Maxey veteran help, or have they seen enough that these dudes just don't stay healthy and we've got to move on?
Yeah, I don't think they move on. I think they're kind of pot committed at least for another year, because who knows what operations or procedures that they'll hope work on Embiid for getting him ready for next playoffs. But yeah, I mean, it's a weird position because they can get a really good talent, right? If you do believe that you can develop Ace Bailey into something, if you do believe one of these other guys is someone who can become a star, a Trey Johnson, someone like that. I've seen VJ Edgecombe kind of get mocked there. I like him. I don't know if that's like number 3 pick good, crazy athlete, decent shooter, doesn't really move the ball. I don't really know that there's a good, natural fit there at 3. So I would say you either swing for the guy with the highest potential, and if you think that's Ace Bailey, then you do it, and you hope Paul George is an incredible influence in terms of, development and professionalism and everything. Because look, we can make a lot of jokes about Paul George. He's still an incredible player, right? Like yes, he can be a punching bag at times, but he's still an incredible player. And so if you do put him, Ace under his wing, like you maybe get a great just mentorship there to set him on the right path. Daryl Morey said that they plan to keep it. So if you're James Harden, elsewhere in the world, you believe that he's lying. I don't know, but I think they should explore it. Like, I think that team needs as much veteran help as possible. They need guys who can play now. This isn't a 2 timeline situation. Like, they need guys who can play and be healthy and actually play now. Yeah, no, for sure. All right, remaining few minutes, let's talk about teams that are actually still playing basketball, and we'll start out east. Zach, you like dogs. I do.
All right, so I've come to the conclusion that Donovan is a golden doodle, and you love golden doodles, and you can bring them to the dog park, and sometimes they drop 50, right? And sometimes they'll win a dog show, but Indiana's got pit bulls. I mean, they just and look, Donovan had plenty of really good playoff games, and he always does. It's just when the moments demand toughness and physicality, we saw it here, and we're seeing it in Cleveland. There's just something about him that doesn't exude that toughness when the moment is requiring toughness, and he can do a post-game press conference where he drops F-bombs and you guys are going to write this and I'm getting in the gym. I don't know, man. Your takeaways from Indiana taking care of Cleveland.
Yeah, it's funny. Like the past few years, I've been banging this drum of like his playoff reputation is not earned. You know, like this is outdated. I didn't feel that way after this series. I felt like he was making a lot of like the good decisions and the good plays of what he's supposed to do, and then eventually was looking around halfway through a game, the last one excluded, or whichever one they were down 40 at halftime, like looking around, and going, "Hey, is anyone going to join me here?
Yeah.
Does anyone want to play?" And then he would just kind of have to take this on himself and either run out of gas or he just didn't have it, or like you said, like sometimes he's going to drop 50 and sometimes he's just going to be a golden doodle that is just there. And that team is just mentally weak. We've seen it for 3 straight years, and every time they have an excuse. Every time. And when you're on year 3 of like, yeah, but his toe hurt, or yeah, but they had this, or yeah, but that, like, okay, great. You can't but your way to the championship. You just can't. And you're on year 3, and this year, none of those guys could hit a shot. None of those guys wanted the ball. I saw like Donovan just go like, okay, I guess I have to do this. He can. Everything you just said is 100% correct. Like he can do all those quotes and all that stuff, and it kind of turns you into like the guard version of Karl Anthony Towns in Minnesota, right? Where like, yeah, all that speak is great, but you got to deliver at some point. But I looked around and like Mobley shriveled up, Darius Garland. I know he had the toe injury and everything. Man, that dude's never been that dude in the playoffs. Like I'm sorry, like I was having this argument with a couple of friends. I was like, if they had Andrew Nembhard instead of Darius Garland, they win that series. Like you're right. Like Indiana is a bunch of dogs. Like those guys are tough. Those guys are fearless. Those guys are ready to play in the playoffs. Nobody on Cleveland was ready to play. And I look at that and I think yeah, you can run it back, and the whole Tatum injury changes things, but they're still going to be soft next year when it comes to the postseason. Like, what changes?
Yeah. All right. Do the Knicks get it done? It feels like they have to get it done tomorrow.
Yeah. That's a great question. I do kind of just think that was like, are you going to get that game where you rally around the Tatum injury and you're at home and shots fall? But man, it is the Knicks, right? Mm-hmm. If anybody was going to do it, it's the Knicks, and this is still a really good team. Like I actually thought the offense flowed really well, and it helps when the shots are falling for Boston. But they were forced to play a more team-oriented thing. They didn't have 2 guys who could just go one-on-one and create stuff. They really had to get into the lane and make that ball move, and we saw that in the second half especially. And so if they can play that way in Madison Square Garden, whether the shots fall or not, if they play that style of ball, it's going to frustrate the Knicks. But I got to take the Knicks here tomorrow night. Even the Knicks got to close this one out. We got to get Knicks Pacers round 2 for this. I would feel so bad for Knicks fans if this one goes that way. That can't happen.
Yeah, like I said, I feel like if they don't get it done tomorrow, man, Sunday is going to be nerve-wracking.
It's going to be tough. Yeah.
All right, let's move over to I feel like I was just waiting for Jimmy Butler to be who he was a couple years ago when he carried the Heat to the finals by himself after Steph went down. But then you look at everything Minnesota can throw at him, and I don't know. I still was kind of waiting for him to take over in a way that just never happened. Boston can look really connected without Tatum, and Golden State is just lost without Steph. So takeaways from Minnesota taking care of Golden State.
Yeah, I mean, they just, it's that Miami team was built a certain way to play around Jimmy. And maybe if there's more familiarity throughout a season or a couple of seasons, maybe you can find that. But one, there's not a lot of shooting on that team when Steph's not there, and 2, I don't know that he was ready to do that. I don't know that. He's got Jaden McDaniels and Julius Randle's playing the best ball of his life, and they've got Nickeil, Alexander Walker. They've got Ant. Like they've just got a lot of guys that they like you said that they can throw at Jimmy, and there's just not a lot of spacing there. And Minnesota might be the better team even when Steph is there. Minnesota's good.
Yeah.
That is a good team. They're turning the ball over a lot, and they, if they play OKC in the next round, they have to clean that up. But that is a team that can't they're good enough to win a championship.
Yeah, they are. No, I agree. Probably should have been paying more attention to them than most people were. All right, final thing. I won't write Denver off until they're done because of the respect I have for Jokic, but man, are they thin. And Jamal Murray is questionable with an illness. OKC is a 5-point favorite in Denver tonight. Does it end or does it go to 7 in OKC?
It feels like this series deserves a Game 7, right? Now, I also feel like that Game 7 could be a 45-point win for the Thunder. I don't think we're guaranteed a great finish, but I do feel like we're guaranteed a Game 7. I think we're going to get a great Jokic game regardless. He had 3 miserable games, and he was fantastic last game, even though his teammates let him down. The role players at home, they got to play better. They at least got to hit a couple of shots in the fourth quarter. If they hit like 4 shots in the fourth quarter, Denver wins that game. They hit 1. They hit 1 around him. If they hit 4 more, they win that game. And so I don't think that's asking a lot. I think OKC on the road might struggle a little bit there. So I'm going to say they get it done, but I have zero confidence in anybody not named Nikola Jokic.
I'm with you there. Zach, good to talk to you, man. It's been too long. Glad the travels went well, and enjoy the games. We'll chat soon.
Dale.
Oh, dear. Man,
it
was such a good interview until the end. All right, the great Zach Harper at Talk Hoops on Twitter, writes for The Athletic, covers the NBA. He has a newsletter called The Bounce and then does a couple of different podcasts, including Cinephobe, which is a fun movie podcast. He works his tail off, so support his work. Brought to you today by our friends at All Poly Sports. Their Rising Stars Camp is right around the corner. It's June 17th through the 18th at Lone Peak Park, which is 10140 South, 700 East in Sandy. Full padded and a full contact camp. You must provide your own equipment, helmet, shoulder pads, knee pads, chin strap, mouth guard, jersey, and cleats. Camp fee does not include lodging, meals, football equipment, or transportation. Due to NCAA rules, reduced fees or scholarships not available as well. All Poly Sports is non-refundable. Register for the Rising Stars Camp if you are currently in grades 6 through the 8th at allpolysports.com. All right, got a little sports court coming your way on the other side. Then we'll launch into the 5 o'clock hour of the program. We'll give you a PGA Championship update. Some of the best golfers in the world are really having a tough time with this golf course. And then we will say goodnight at 6, and you'll hear Denver OKC on this radio station. So keep it right here on ESPN 700, 92.1 FM. We are proud to be part of Utah's ESPN radio network. We'll get to the 5 o'clock hour of the program in a bit. The PGA Championship going on. This course is causing a lot of issues for some of the best golfers in the world. We have some NBA playoffs on our radio station tonight. It is Denver taking on OKC, but time now for Sports Court with our friends Garrett and Preston Handy from the law firm of Handy and Handy. Gentlemen, happy Thursday. How we doing?
Hey, Spence. How you doing?
Hi, Spence.
All good here. All right. Let's start with well, we're all waiting for the House first NCAA settlement. I'm sure Mark Harlan, now Brian Santiago, and administrators across the landscape of college athletics are just wondering when we are going to see this thing finally come to fruition. What's the latest, guys? Give us the update.
Yeah, Spence, are we tired of this? For the first time ever, I'm thinking it still might be a while. I mean, we keep hearing that this stuff's going to happen, but just to review, just the recent stuff that happened, the main thing was Judge Wilkins, she wasn't happy about the roster limits and how they were kind of imposed. So remember, the plaintiffs group for the settlement is really the NCAA and the House plaintiffs' attorneys. They're teamed up now trying to get this settlement across the finish line, and they all seem to be in agreement about everything. So they responded to Judge Wilkins, and kind of the two main concessions they made, and again, they said, we're bending over backwards here. We thought it was fair before. Roster limits take place in all kinds of sports, but we're going to bend over backwards, and they increased the roster limits, I think, to 115. But the main thing that they did was they said they grandfathered in players that were already in school, on teams, and teams that had been committed to schools. They got grandfathered in and couldn't be essentially cut. Well, three groups have come in, and they're objectors. The judge opened it up and said, hey, if anyone wants to, we've got this agreement in place. If anyone wants to object to it, get your objections in. It's got to be limited to 5 pages. Well, three groups came in with really heavy objections, and essentially what they said was, yeah, you might say this is stuff protecting these athletes, but it's really not. They're saying that the schools, you're saying you're grandfathering in, but the schools, in fact, have control over what athletes get protection of the grandfathering. You know, they can pick and choose this stuff. And one area they called it an injunctive relief class, saying that teams that are athletes that were on teams didn't really get the protection they were looking for. A couple of instances they point out, and I think this is really interesting. Everyone thought this was going to go through, and the end of April, schools started applying cuts. They started cutting players and reducing roster limits, and then we go along here, and Judge Wilkins says, no, we can't have these roster limits. So the question is, do schools go back to these players that have been cut and maybe transferred to other schools and say, oh, by the way, this agreement requires us to bring you back? I don't know what that looks like. Another complaint of these parties was, if this goes through, do parties that don't like it, do they really have any due process here? I'm sure that someone could come up with a way that they could contest this settlement. And it's important to note this is a settlement. This is a settlement agreement that the parties on both sides are reaching an agreement. So if Judge Wilkins doesn't like it, she doesn't have the right to just go in there, no, I'm going to scratch this, I'm going to add this, I'm going to edit this, I'm going to make this the agreement that I can really approve of. No, she has to let the parties do this and decide whether she's going to approve it. But now we've got, a bunch of people that aren't in favor of it, so we'll see what happens. I don't think it's going to happen really quickly.
Oh, dear, Preston, that's not the news we wanted. Gary, you're up, buddy.
I hope I'm wrong.
Yeah, I was just going to point out one local connection. One of the student-athlete objectors is a freshman, University of Utah swim team freshman, Gannon Flynn. He's taken kind of a little bit of a lead role as an objector. He's had some time to make some arguments in front of the judge and state his position and essentially testify as one of the objectors. So just a little local connection.
All right, moving
awesome.
over. Oh, sorry. Sorry. Moving over.
The Garrett knew that. That's awesome.
Garrett brings the knowledge, Preston. That's what we've become accustomed to with Garrett.
Yeah.
All right, Michael Jordan against NASCAR. Another situation we've discussed. What's the latest here?
Yeah, and I'm going to try to simplify this a little bit, Spence, this NASCAR lawsuit. It's another antitrust lawsuit. We've talked about that a lot on Sports Court. But basically, Michael Jordan's got these two NASCAR teams. And the argument, more or less, is that NASCAR is a monopoly, right, and that they're anti-competitive and that they control how much the teams are paid and what teams can participate through these charter agreements. And so Jordan's teams were presented with these charter agreements last year, I think, and said, no, we're not going to sign these. Part of the reason they didn't want to sign their charter agreement is because it contained a release clause, and they would have to release NASCAR from any future claims like an antitrust lawsuit that they had. And they were already planning to file this a lawsuit against NASCAR, and so they refused to sign. And then what they did is they had filed their lawsuit, their antitrust lawsuit against NASCAR, and then filed for a preliminary injunction. And they won that at the lower court level that was granted against NASCAR, and so they were able to participate in this NASCAR season. And so NASCAR has appealed that now. It's gone up before the Fourth Circuit, a 3-judge panel, and they heard oral argument this week. And, if we're just going off of oral argument and kind of the vibe that we're getting from the judges, it seems that, they felt like that maybe the preliminary injunction should not have been granted. It comes down to the legal term of you don't get to have your cake and eat it too. They're saying to Jordan's teams, look, you guys didn't have to sign the contract, and then you still got to participate in the season. If you think that this is a monopoly and you don't want to participate, then opt out and sue. But they've been able to do both, right? So this may be a little speed bump for Jordan's antitrust NASCAR lawsuit.
All right, Preston, you're up, bud.
Yeah, only one thing. Garrett nailed it. The only thing is, even if they lose, if Jordan's group loses this and they lift the injunction and say, no, you've got to comply with this, they can still go forward with the antitrust lawsuit. The only thing is they just probably can't race on the NASCAR circuit and have their charter right now until the lawsuit is resolved one way or the other.
All right, moving over to the world of tennis, ATP Tour cannot threaten players that are joining this antitrust suit. We've kind of covered this a little bit in the past, but there's an update. So what's going on here?
Yeah, we have covered it a little bit in the past, and this grows out of a lawsuit where 12 players sued a bunch of the governing bodies of tennis, and essentially what their claim was that these groups were operating as a cartel, and they conspired to unlawfully price fix and set earning opportunities for players and locking them into obligations and exclusively participate in their approved tournaments. One example is there was a tournament going to happen, and apparently the tournament themselves wanted to increase the purse to $1.6 million, and these governing bodies came in and said, no, you can't do that. So this recent thing, this case is going through as an antitrust lawsuit, anti-competitive, and the recent ruling is one thing is cited that ATP and the other groups are approaching players and saying, oh, hey, here's this written agreement. We want you to sign it, denouncing this lawsuit, saying it's a bad thing. And they're putting pressure and intimidating these players. One player even said that they tried to take a picture of the agreement, I think, to have it for some type of posterity in case they maybe joined the lawsuit. And they were informed by the representative that, hey, we're going to go tattletale on you, and you're going to get in big trouble if you do that. And part of the things they're saying is that they could reduce their pension and wages. And so what happened is this group, in the midst of this lawsuit, went to the judge and said, hey, judge, this intimidation type stuff is happening. And so the judge, she ruled basically just on this issue, and they basically saying that as this lawsuit goes forward, ATP and the other governing bodies of tennis, they can't engage in improper, coercive, and otherwise threatening communication with players regarding the potential lawsuit. They can communicate with them. They just can't force them to, present them with this agreement and retaliate, essentially. So that's just a limited hearing right now, something that's happened, and the lawsuit will go forward, and probably some other players will join this. We'll see.
All right, Gary, you're up.
Well, hey, just a little deja vu. It's reminding me of all the time we had spent, talking about the Live Golf PGA cases, antitrust, right? And if players were going to join the Live Tour and essentially be blackballed or retaliated against by the PGA. So, it's a movie we've seen before, I guess.
Yeah, good call. All right, an American basketball player has been arrested in Indonesia for alleged drug smuggling. I've never heard of this basketball player, but that's why you guys are here. What's going on?
Well, check it out. Jared Dwayne Shaw, 34 years old. He plays currently for the Tangerang Hawks in the Indonesian Basketball League, but he played his college basketball at Utah State.
All right.
This guy's an Aggie. So he's over there playing in Indonesia and gets busted. Apparently a shipment of, sounds like marijuana, it says candy, but edibles or whatever, marijuana from Thailand to Indonesia. And so he accepts this package. Apparently told police he was going to share with his teammates. So he's been arrested. And look, Indonesia is one of the some of the strictest drug laws in the world. He is arrested and potentially facing a life sentence or death penalty if found guilty, which is just crazy. Yeah, pretty crazy. I mean, another case we've talked about, Brittany Griner. This isn't that, but this is in a very serious situation and player with a local tie.
All right, Preston, you're up.
That was my one thing saying, hopefully he, I doubt he's under such strict restrictions, he's probably not going to be able to get a call out to Brittany Griner and see how to handle this, because we talked about that how many times, and I think the laws, word of caution, don't break the law. Second word of caution, don't break the law in a foreign country where you really don't have your due process and rights, and you're subject to their laws. That's just the way it is.
Good PSA of the day. Go ahead, Preston.
Let me ask you this. I don't think we might find out later, but I doubt that Indonesia is holding any U.S. prisoners that we can use as or we're holding any Indonesians that we can use as a bargaining chip to get him out of there.
Well said. Well said. All right, final one for today. Frida Karlsson, who's a Swedish cross-country skiing world champion, said she was standing up for women by bringing the issue of stalking into the public gaze after being, quote, victimized by a man in an ordeal lasting more than a year. Time is yours.
Don't know a lot about this other than what you said. Interesting, though, that the man, he was indicted, and it said that he had called her 207 times, left several voice messages, text messages, and approached her outside her apartment. So this was some real stalking going on. I think the cautionary tale she's saying is that some people don't want to fight this, but she did fight this, and this man was prosecuted. She actually went through a trial and stood up and said, I'm glad I went through this trial to achieve justice. And so that's what we know about it.
All right, Garrett.
She's a skier.
Final word is yours.
Skier. That's what we know.
Yep. All right, Garrett, you're up.
Well, similar case, right? I mean, we saw it with the U.S. Open tennis player. I'm going to butcher her name. Emma Raducanu.
Nailed it.
Raducanu. Anyway, same thing. A guy was stalking her, found guilty. So don't stalk athletes.
To several good PSAs of the day today coming from our friends at Handy and Handy. All right, gentlemen, before I set you loose for today, for any of our listeners who have legal questions, how do they get a hold of you over at Handy and Handy?
Yeah, Spence, we love coming on here. We'd love to hear from anyone out there if they have any legal issues, serve as a legal resource to you, but especially if you have a case in our specialty of personal injury, give us a call. We'd love to speak with you and help you out. Call us at 801-264-6677 or visit our website at handylawutah.com.
Okay, thank you, gentlemen. Appreciate the time today. Have an excellent weekend, and as always, go Utes.
Go Utes. Thanks, Spence.
All right, there they are, Garrett and Preston Handy from the law firm of Handy and Handy. I'll tell you what, I don't know much about Quail Hollow Golf Course, but it is causing tremendous issues for some of the best golfers in the world. Wyndham Clark is attempting to play from out of bounds, I think. Both Jordan Spieth and Justin Thomas just dumped their approaches into the water on 18. And on 16, the three highest-ranked golfers in the world, Scottie Scheffler, Rory McIlroy, and Xander Schauffele, all made double bogeys. Gerard's in the lead. Davis 5 under. Luke Donald carded a 4 under. Former world number one. We'll give you a PGA Tour leaderboard and an update in the 5 o'clock hour of the show. We also do some NBA playoffs and a couple of interesting off-season notes about the Utah football program and the Big 12 football conference as a whole. We'll get to that as the 5 o'clock hour of the drive comes your way. Coming up next on the other side right here on ESPN 700. All right, let's get it. Drive at 5 time Thursday afternoon style, about 2 minutes past the hour, 5 o'clock. Another kind of a chilly May day, a little warmer today than it was yesterday. Some decent conditions tomorrow and Saturday, and it's going to cool down again Sunday and through the beginning of next week. But happy Thursday to you. You're almost there, almost weekend time, one day away from the weekend. And as it is every single day, it's going to have you along for the ride. Spence Checketts behind the mic. Porter Larson producing the program today, Behind the Glass. 5 o'clock hour today is brought to you by friends at Cortland Roofing, re-roofing and roof repair experts. With over 20 years of experience, they're family-owned and operated. Call Cortland Roofing today to get free rain gutters with any roof replacement. If you're in the market, or if you're almost in the market, if you're walking outside, you check out the roof, like that's not looking good, you should call Cortland Roofing right now because they're offering free rain gutters with your roof replacement, which is a savings of thousands of dollars. So here's the number at 801-615-5560. That's 801-615-5560, 801-615-5560, or online at cortlandroofing.com. All right, we're going to go live to Denver, not as a show. It's too late for that. But Tony Jones, who covers the Denver Nuggets, will give us a preview of a massive game tonight. The Thunder are in Denver at Ball Arena to take on the Denver Nuggets, and OKC is actually a 4.5-point favorite. News came down about an hour and a half ago that Jamal Murray is officially questionable with an illness. And, of course, Denver is fighting for their playoff lives. If OKC wins, they advance to the Western Conference Finals to take on the Minnesota Timberwolves, who dispatched of the Golden State Warriors last night with relative ease, 121-110. It was a great night for former Jazz man Mike Conley, who kind of captured the fountain of youth, hit 4 3-point shots, had 16 points, 8 assists, and 6 rebounds. Rudy Gobert, 17 points, 8 boards. So a couple of former Jazz men. In addition to Nickeil Alexander-Walker, they also have Joe Ingles on the bench. So happy for Minnesota. Bummed to not be watching the Stephen Curry experience. And you have to wonder whether or not this is the final time we'll even see Steph. Although he was hurt, missed the final couple of games. There was some conversation that he might come back and play last night. Gave it a go, was not able to go. And Jimmy Butler never fully was able to capture that ball-dominant scoring prowess we've seen from him in the playoffs in the past. And Minnesota advances to the Western Conference Finals for the second straight year. You know, it's funny we do this thing about trades, and that's why I hate trade grades. I respect the people that do it, and it's part of the media game. You got to do it. Your boss likes you to do it because listeners like to check it out. Readers want to click on a trade grade to see if your team won the trade. And if you remember when the Jazz made the Gobert trade, it was more or less consensus that the Jazz fleeced Minnesota. I was not as adamant that that was the deal. Now, there's plenty of time left to see what the draft picks manifest for the Jazz, as opposed to analyzing this deal right now. But you always have to wait and see. And, of course, Walker Kessler was part of that deal, and he's been really good for the Jazz, and I think he's part of the core of the Jazz moving forward. But there's a reason why Minnesota and Tim Connolly is one of the best general managers in pro basketball, the guy that's credited with finding Nikola Jokic for the Denver Nuggets. We're so willing to give up that draft capital and some young pieces in exchange for Rudy because you can see that he continues to impact winning. And he really outplayed his old buddy Draymond Green in this series. Of course, as connected as Boston looked last night, as Boston was able to extend the series with the Knicks to 6 games, that goes back to Madison Square Garden, where we'll find it tomorrow at 6 o'clock Mountain Time. Boston looked really good. They looked connected. Their defensive effort was really solid. They bothered New York shooters. And offensively, the ball popped in a way that sometimes it doesn't with Tatum on the floor because Tatum's a bit of a ball stopper, even though he's awesome. As connected as Boston looked against New York, Golden State is so lost without Curry. It's very, very obvious, of course, to make that statement because Stephen Curry is generationally special. So last night, as I referenced, the Boston Celtics were able to get it done against the New York Knicks at TD Garden in front of a raucous crowd, 127-102. Really was the third quarter where Boston outscored New York 32-17. Fourth quarter, the Knicks made a little bit of a comeback, but Boston could not miss. And right now, the Celtics have outscored the Knicks plus 90 in this series from the three-point line, which is who they are and what they do. Derek White, 7 of 13 from 3. Derek White has hit 13 three-point shots in the past 2 games. Peyton Pritchard came off the bench, played 39 minutes as Tatum was on the sideline. He had 17, 5 of 14 from 3. He was 6 of 17 from the floor, though. Randomly enough, as a result of Kristaps Porzingis either not being right, not being healthy, or being hurt, or simply forgetting how to play basketball, Joe Mazzulla pulled him after 12 minutes, and he didn't play the rest of the game. And that was the move that may have made this thing completely untenable for New York, because I don't know who the hell Luke Cornett thinks he is, but he played like Bill Russell last night. 26 minutes, made all 5 of his shots, had 10 points, 9 rebounds, and 7 block shots to really bother the Knicks at the rim, and New York could not get anything going really from the outside. Miles McBride had a good game. Josh Hart randomly went 5 of 9, which he never does. But Mikal Bridges, 4 of 14. OG, who I love, man, that's my guy, 1 of 12. And Jaylen Brown took the assignment of guarding Jalen Brunson, and for the most part, turned his water off. Now, Jalen Brunson did finish with 22 points and 6 assists, but he needed 17 shots to do it. Only hit 1 of 4 from 3. 9 free throws, that's a good number. You like that. But we'll see if the New York Knicks can get it done tomorrow at MSG. If not, they're going back to Boston for a Sunday afternoon Game 7 tilt against the Boston Celtics. So, playoff basketball, of course, we'll have that game on the station tonight, the Thunder and the Nuggets. We will bring that to you right after Tony Jones stops by live in Denver. The PGA Championship is going on right now at Quail Hollow Golf Club in Charlotte, North Carolina. Xander Schauffele is your defending champ. Some interesting storylines. Jordan Spieth is attempting to win the Grand Slam. I think this is Jordan's 10th try at the Grand Slam, and I don't know that he's even going to make the cut. I believe Jordan was in the clubhouse at 4 over par. He may have bogeyed the last. I have not been watching because, we're doing radio. But Jordan dumped his approach on 18 into the water, and it looks like he did finish at 5 over. 76 is what he carded, 5 over par, which is tied for 129th. So the quest for the Grand Slam is probably not going to happen this year, but this golf course has caused a lot of issues for some of the best golfers in the world. Phil Mickelson, 8 over par, probably not going to make the cut. Dustin Johnson, where have you gone, Dustin Johnson? Live Golf stole that dude's game. 7 over par for DJ. Cam Smith, another Live golfer, 5 over par, once upon a time a major champ. It is a shame what that league has done to some of the best golfers in the world. Sergio Garcia, 4 over. Brooks Koepka, 4 over. All the Live guys are struggling. Rory McIlroy cards a 74. He's at 3 over par, as is Patrick Cantlay. Goodness gracious. Some of the best golfers in the world. JT, 2 over par. Max Homa, 2 over par. Let's give a little love to the leaders. How about that? The problem is most of the best golfers in the world not on this leaderboard as of now, at least at the top. Ryan Gerard is 5 under par. He carded a 66 today, as is Cam Davis, who rallied late for a 66. Luke Donald, Ryder Cup captain for the Europeans and formerly the number 1 player in the world, even at his advanced age, he cards a 4 under par for second place, along with Steven Yeager and Alex Smalley. Aaron Riot, 4 under par. Matt Fitzpatrick at 3 under, so is Keegan Bradley. Victor Hovland, I believe he birdied the final 2 holes to card a 3 under par. Scotty Scheffler, despite a double bogey on 16, also at 2 under par as well. So we have a major championship going on right now. Just so you know, Tony Finau with a good, not great, solid 70, which is a 1 underscore, which ties him at 31 and keeps him in the mix at only 4 shots back after 1 round. So the afternoon groups are finishing up as of now as far as major championship golf goes. So that's kind of the deal. We've got a lot of NBA playoff stuff. Of course, we've been talking a lot today, trying to move on from the disappointment of the Jazz, I'll say falling to 5 because that was their floor. But they only had a 14% chance at 1. The odds and the percentages did indicate the most likely landing spot for the Jazz were 4 and 5. And unfortunately, they fell to 5. So the NBA Combine is going on right now. And so we've been doing some draft stuff, trying to move on from the disappointment and analyze who could be there at 5. Because even though we were all hoping that the Jazz would land 1 in Cooper Flagg, they will get a good player at 5. And as the Combine rolls along, some interesting storylines manifesting themselves. Ace Bailey, who at one point was thought to be a surefire number 3 pick after Cooper Flagg and Dylan Harper. Ace was listed by Rutgers all year as a 6'10" wing. He measured 6'7" without shoes. Side note, why are we measuring players without shoes? That has never made sense to me. Are we playing barefoot moving forward? Like, it doesn't make sense to me. Like, hey, it's like Fletch, 6'6", but 6'9" with the afro. Why do we measure players of the combine without shoes? It makes zero sense to me.
Or just measure all of them with shoes or without. It just has to be the same. Either way, you just have to have some uniformity there. I think I like with shoes because that's the basketball player you get, right? That's the guy that's going out there on the floor. Throw him in his basketball shoes, get his vertical leap, get his measurements, and that's the guy you get when you get drafted.
Well, that's the point. This isn't beach volleyball. When you play basketball, call me old-fashioned, you wear shoes.
I think so, usually.
We're not playing in the Dominican on the beach. You're playing in the NBA on hardwood floors. It has never made any sense to me. He's like, hey, he's 6'2" without shoes. Okay, what is he with shoes? Because when he plays basketball, he's wearing his basketball shoes.
Yeah, there's already like a want and a I guess there's a culture of like, adding an inch or two to your height. Just get some uniformity on it. Just get something across the board.
Studies show that 88% of women on dating apps will not engage with men that are shorter than 5'8".
What do you have your thing listed at?
6'2". None of your business. I'm legitimately 6 feet, man.
Are you?
5'11".
I was gonna say every man, like 90% of men that are 6 feet are like 5'11" and a quarter.
I have a friend. Okay, so really, if I went to the doctor, he would say you're 5'11".
Right.
That's tall enough for me to list 6 feet.
You get measured with your shoes off.
But moving forward, I'm getting measured with my shoes on. I have a friend who legitimately is 46 years old and 5'5", and on his dating app, he's 40 years old and 5'9". It's like the
That's
most.
awesome.
It's so egregious, though, because if you show up to the date and they're expecting someone, like he's 5'9" and he puts 5'5", or excuse me, he's 5'5" and he puts 5'9" on his profile. It'd be one thing to put 5'8" on there, or like exaggerate by an inch or two, but 4 inches. Wouldn't you show up to the date and be like, "I'm leaving, you liar"?
Well, it's one thing on a basketball roster. So the team that's scouting you in high school, maybe they look at you a little differently. Like everyone on my basketball roster in high school was 6'1", 6'2", 6'3". There was like one person on my team that was actually over 6 foot. But when you're showing up for a date, like that person's going to probably call you out on it or at least notice.
Of course they're going to notice. Like, you're 4 inches shorter than you said on the app. And by the way, 7 years younger, too. At what point you're going to get to the conversation like, wait a second, you're 47 and not 40? You're already 5'5" and not 5'9". Like, I don't know, man. I think it's a problem. I think you need to be accurate with the information, both in life and on dating apps. That's my PSA of the day.
I agree with you.
Okay.
I agree with you. I think with combine stuff, with the draft, with all of it, let's just put it out there. Transparency is key.
Well said. The other dirty trick is a picture with like your 3 hottest friends.
And you don't know which one's which?
Yeah. And then you're like, all right, so who are you exactly? Which one are you? And by the way, the ones that have the group pictures, they're always the ones that's the least attractive.
Maybe.
To the group.
Maybe they're throwing you off.
No, trust me. Have pictures that are up to date. Okay, stop fooling people. We live in a society, if I can go George Costanza, accurate with your height, accurate with the pictures, not 15 years ago when you were in college.
Are we still talking about the draft?
Yes, we are. We are. Hey, you got us off track there. I'm just saying, like, we don't need to measure these prospects without shoes. It makes zero sense. Anyway, before we break, it appears to be as of now, with the Jazz at 5, one of the following 3 players should be available: Ace Bailey, VJ Edgecombe, and then Trey Johnson. My guess is, and this is a guess, and June 25th is still a number of weeks away, one of those 3 will fall to 5, and whichever of the 3 falls, that's who the Jazz are going to take. Now, there's the Malawatch kid from Duke, but the Jazz already have Walker Kessler. If you want to go Con Knippel, go Con Knippel. I'm not sure. Jonathan Givony has the Jazz drafting Jeremiah Fears from Oklahoma, who is a small guard. Reminds a lot of people of Jalen Brunson. I don't know if the Jazz really want to go in that direction, but It's time to put the disappointment of the Jazz falling to 5 aside and analyze who they could take. This is a good vibe song. Doobie Brothers, always good vibe song. In a way, randomly, you and I are actually the Doobie Brothers.
In a way.
It's one of the weirdest connections that we have because I swore like I was never going to meet anyone else that had the same nickname I do. And my grandfather, may he rest in peace, when I was 2 years old, started calling me Spencer Doobie. And my man, LDS, his entire life, I don't think he fully knew what he was doing when he nicknamed me Spencer Doobie. And my family my cousin Chad still calls me Doobie every time I see him. And you have the same connection through your father, which is the most random. So technically, we kind of are the Doobie Brothers.
We are in some way. Now, a little different because my family definitely did know the connotation.
Your family knew what they were doing.
It was my dad was like wrapped up in a little blanket and looked like a little doobie. And my aunt coined him that name, and he was literally known as, like, there are people that I run into today that knew my dad that never knew his real name. They knew him as Doobie. So that was his thing, and then I was Doobie Jr. after that. So
there you go.
Doobie Brothers.
All right, so we got a little playoff action coming your way. I ran into a little bit of an issue on the program, and I elected to take one route. So a little warm in the studio today, not bad, but I ran out of time. I had a bunch of errands to run, so I came straight to the show from the gym. No big deal. It's part of the life.
Just grinded.
So I was about to take the sweatshirt off because it was warm. Tank top underneath.
You know what? I took that to another level recently. I realized I had the zip up jacket on because I was at home. I was doing some chores, but I didn't have anything underneath it. And then I got a call, and I left my house super quickly, and I was out and about, and I realized I literally didn't have a shirt underneath the jacket. And I unzipped it, and there was not even a tank top there, but had to keep the jacket on.
Well, I mean, we're on YouTube, so I'm not going to do the whole, like...
No tank tops on YouTube?
No, I'm not going to do the tank top thing on YouTube, unless somebody incentivizes us.
I think it's
for
an
that.
ESPN thing. I think that's what we're supposed to do now.
Does McAfee still do the tank top thing
Sometimes.
on the show? All right. Anyway.
I'll do it.
Sun's out, guns out. If you want to incentivize us, we'll do the show in tank tops one day.
Get Roan to sponsor a tank top segment.
There we go. I know a guy over there.
This summer.
All right, playoff basketball coming your way. Coming up, Porter, what comes our way on a weekend edition, a Friday edition of the show?
Yeah, man. On a Friday edition of The Drive, as you mentioned, we'll set you loose for the weekend. Craig Bolerjack stops by to recap NBA Draft Lottery Week and look ahead to the NBA the NBA offseason and some NBA playoffs as well. NBA Daily Assist doubled up tomorrow. Howard Beck, Dave McMiniman, both joining the show. We'll talk some RSL with Brian Dunseth. And, of course, we'll keep you guys updated on the PGA Championship. Paul Pugmire will stop by. We'll give away some golf as well.
Very nice. Rough round one for a lot of golfers. Our guy Tony Finau grinds to a 1 under par, which puts him in a good spot, leading up hopefully into the weekend. We'll say goodnight. Special thank you today, Tony Jones, Alema Harrington, and Zach Harper. For any of the sound you missed from the program today, go to the website. It's ESPN700sports.com. Make sure to download our mobile app and take us on the go. The ESPN 700 app is available for free in the App Store and the Google Play Store. And finally, for what we do in our space for 4 hours every afternoon, our podcast page is there for your disposal at any time you want. Please support us. Go to your preferred podcast catcher. Search The Drive with Spence Checketts. Subscribe, rate, review. Say nice things in the comments. Give us all the stars, and it helps. Reporter, I'm Spence saying goodnight. NBA playoff basketball comes your way. Coming up on the other side, right here on ESPN 700, 92.1 FM, and we are proud to be part of Utah's ESPN Radio Network.